There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Please be seated. Honorable members, I wish to announce that the vacancy which occurred owing to Mr. SSA Mpeti's loss of membership of the National Assembly in terms of Section 47(3)(c) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996 had been filled by the nomination of Mr. L.R. Mbinda with effect from the 14th January 2015. The member has made and subscribed the oath and affirmation in the Speaker's office. I wish to welcome Honorable Mbinda, who's since become a member of this House. He's there at the back. He's from the PAC. Order. The first motion on the order paper is in the name of the Chief Whip of the majority party. The Honorable, the representative of the Chief Whip.
Honorable Speaker, I move that the House, notwithstanding Rule 29, which provides the sequence of proceedings, give precedence after the notices of motion on the order paper to an executive statement by the President of the Republic in terms of Rule 106, followed by party responses. Honorable Speaker, I move that the House, notwithstanding Rule 106, agree that the time allocations for the executive statement by the President of the Republic today and the subsequent party responses be as follows. President, 30 minutes. ANC, 12 minutes. DA, 8 minutes. EFF, 4 minutes. And all the other parties, 3 minutes each. So I move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The third motion on the order paper is also in the name of the Chief Whip. Honorable Khatebe.
Honorable Speaker, I move that the House, notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 111, the opportunity to put supplementary questions to the President on 16 April 2015 be limited to the questions originally asked by Ms. H. Malchas, Mr. M.A. Mwango, and Professor N.M. Kubisa on the 21st of August 2014, which subsequently lapsed in terms of the rules. 4 supplementary questions be allowed in respect of each answer, as published in the question paper, and the announcements and tablings and committee reports on the 14th April 2015 for the information of members of the Assembly and the public. The first opportunity for the supplementary question be given to the member in whose name the question originally stood, and in accordance with Rule 113, subsection 6, a member who asks a supplementary question may make a statement or express an opinion, but may not speak for more than 1 minute. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? Honorable Shibambu.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. In terms of the reason why this special question session was convened outside the parliamentary program was because of the insistence of the EFF that the President should conclude the questions that were being asked on the 21st of August 2014. And Rule 11116 says that when the order in which the questions are put to the President according to Rule 1089, it's interrupted at the end of the question session. The next question session to the President starts from the point where the order was so interrupted. You'll remember that 21st of August question session was interrupted when there was still the answer and follow-up questions on when is the president going to pay back the money. And that is the question that we should be building from, because already there was a follow-up question that was going to be coming from Honorable Holomisa prior to that question being answered. So that is where we should be commencing from in terms of the rules of the National Assembly. So we want to request that we comply to the rules, Honorable Speaker, and make sure that we conclude that question session in accordance with the rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Shibambu. Honorable Shibambu, I wish to remind you of my long ruling on the occasion of the last questions to the President sitting here. For whatever reason, it seems I need to, at least in a summarized format, repeat that ruling. Honorable members, the format of today's question session has been discussed among the whips, of which Honorable Shibambu is a member. It was discussed in the Chief Whips Forum and by the National Assembly Program Committee. It has been agreed that the written replies that were received from the President to the 3 questions that were not reached on 21st August 2014, that they would be published in the announcements, tablings, and committee reports and question paper. It was further agreed that the session would be limited, that's today's session, to the questions originally asked by Honorable Malchus, Honorable Mwango, and Honorable Kubisa. And that a resolution to that effect would be considered by the House at the start of proceedings. And honorable members, as I've said, on the 11th of March 2015, I gave a ruling explaining the application of Rule 1116, the essence of which is that this Rule 1116 must be read with Rule 1089, and it refers to the sequence by which political parties have an opportunity to pose questions. When the order of questions is interrupted, as it was on the 21st August, the next session starts from the next party in the rotation. And that issue was discussed by whips of all parties, agreed, clarified, and in fact, the approach of today's session was adopted by all whips of all parties, but clearly Honorable Shibambu, for some reason, was not covered. So we will now proceed with the business of the House on the basis of the agreed approach.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Lozi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we tried to bring to your attention and the attention of the whippery of the ANC that there were consultations in our memory to the effect that the order will begin with the question, and as far as the response of the President is concerned, of the EFF, which was a question probing when is he going to pay back the money. So I want to put it on record that the agreements that you are referring to are not correct. As a matter of fact, the after consultations with the whippery of the ANC and ourselves is that precisely the President is going to begin there on that questions where it was interrupted, that is the follow-ups to the questions of the EFF. So we cannot be bound by an agreement that we did not agree to. And we brought that to the attention of the Honorable Speaker, requesting that the President must be given an opportunity to continue on the follow-ups And the follow-ups were according to parties. So the question of parties that, in terms of the rule that you are reading, applies in terms of follow-up questions. Follow-up questions are also according to different parties. And we request that we must continue. As a matter of fact, Honorable Shivambu was not part of the Chief Whips Forum on that day. But there were disagreements, and we placed it on record that we want the questions to start with the EFF question in terms of follow-ups. So again, we request, Honorable Speaker, and hopefully the President will not mind it. He's on record that he doesn't mind it. And the Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC came to us to guarantee us that no, we're in one understanding that we're going to begin with the follow-up questions of the EFF. So we think that the President must begin there, clarify, Honorable Holomisa must follow in terms of the sequence as per the follow-up questions.
Honorable Ndlozi, we note what you think, we note what you remember, but the situation is as I have put to you according to the ruling, and we will proceed according to what has been agreed by all other parties except what we're hearing from the EFF. Honorable Holomisa.
Honorable Speaker, I wish to join this discussion in the following manner. I submit that there is no rational basis for treating supplementary questions in respect of question number 3 any different from the supplementary questions in respect of questions 4 to 6 that are on today's question paper. The answer cannot be that the supplementary questions in respect of question number 3 lapsed under the said rule, that is 316 subsection 1. That is so because today's question paper states that all the questions that stood over on 21st August lapsed at the end of 2014 term. Yet here we are asking supplementary questions only in respect of the lapsed questions 4 to 6. Finally, Madam Speaker, I request that you exercise the authority under Rule 2 to direct that the supplementary questions that stood over in respect of Honorable Malima's question number 3 on the 21st of August be dealt with today, and that you allow me to ask my supplementary question. Kungamalala, not kuwe.
Honorable Holomisa, there's an agreement among all whips of all parties, and we are going to stick to that as we proceed with the business of today as according to the order paper. Honorable Malema.
No, Honorable Speaker, you can't keep on insisting that there is an agreement on how we need to proceed today, because we're saying to you, we're not part of that agreement. And we have a right to ask the question. You said all these questions have lapsed. Now you have brought them back here. It will be incorrect of you to answer questions piecemeal. Take the whole 21st of August. And then where the President ended, that's where we need to start. And that's what the rules say. It can't be that because one question you are uncomfortable with, it has to lapse and the rest of them should not lapse. Actually, there must be follow-up questions. There is no rule like that. We are asking in a very polite way that the President should be given an opportunity to answer that question of when is he paying back the money, and then we close that question, and then we move forward. Otherwise, that question will keep on repeating itself. So the best thing is to ask the President, when is he paying back the money? Blade. If you want to speak, ask the speaker there. Communist Party, please, man. You must behave.
Honorable members, I now want to put this matter to the House to decide. Because we can't go round and round in circles listening to the views of only one group of people in this House. And so I put the draft resolution as put forward to the House.
Honorable Speaker,
No, Honorable Ndlozi.
on a point of order.
No, Honorable Ndlozi, I'm not taking any point from you. Please take your seat now.
Honorable
I wish,
Speaker,
no, Honorable
I'm rising on a
Ndlozi.
point of order,
Honorable
Speaker.
Ndlozi, I'm not taking any
But the
more
rules
points.
allow me to rise on a point of order, Honorable
Ndlozi,
Speaker.
take your seat.
I'd like to take my seat, but the
Take your
rules
seat.
allow me to rise and ask you to recognize me in terms of a point of order. And I'm sticking to the rules, requesting you to recognize me and listen to my appeal for a point of order.
Honorable Ndlozi.
Please, Honorable Speaker, may I get the right to address you on a point of order?
Take your seat.
Will you allow me to address you on a point of order,
I'm
Honorable
not.
Speaker? But it's illegal, Honorable Speaker.
Take your seat, Honorable
The Chief
Ndlozi.
Whip's Forum's decisions according to these rules are not binding.
Honorable Ndlozi, please take
And
your seat.
please, Honorable Speaker, you can't ask us to stick to an agreement of a forum. On an agreement of a forum that the ANC misled us on. But you must stick to the rules. You've got a duty, Honorable Speaker, to stick to the rules. The rules say that we're going to continue according to where we ended when the order was interrupted. And where we ended was on when the president is going to pay back the money. There is a different angle that other honorable members who were on the line would have wanted to introduce, and the president might be able to respond to them. We can't subject this to a vote when there is a rule.
Honorable Ndlozi, please take your seat.
It's illegal.
Take your seat, Honorable Ndlozi. Honorable members, I put the motion as put forward by
Honorable Speaker.
the Chief Whip of the majority
Honorable
party.
Speaker.
And I
Can we
want
rise
to
on a
know,
point
no,
of order?
Honorable Shibambu, I am not recognizing you. I have not
But
recognized
we can't allow
Take
you to
your
make
seat.
a wrong procedural process.
Take your
in
seat,
terms
Honorable
of how the
Shibambu.
program of parliament is determined.
Please
The
take
program
your
of
seat.
parliament is not determined in a vote in the way you are going to do now. The program of parliament is discussed in the Chief Whip's Forum. It goes to the programming committee.
Order.
And then there, that is when we have an
Order.
agreement. There is an agreement that is contrary to what we are saying there.
Take your seat,
We
Honorable
must comply to
Shibambu.
the rules in terms of what they say should happen with the question session. Why are we uplifting it for our own convenience?
Take your seat.
But can you listen to the order before you subject it to
Take
the
your
vote?
seat. I'm not.
On a point of order.
Honorable members, is there any
No, Honorable
objection?
Speaker, you are taking a wrong direction because
Honorable Malema,
you cannot. No. You
You are
cannot
going
want
to
to
take- you are
subject.
not going
I'm
to
not
take
going to take
over
any
from
seat.
me.
I'm not going to take any seat. You cannot want to apply the rules when they favor you. We are saying to you, there is rules which needs to be followed, and you are not listening to us.
I am ruling
want
and
to
I've told
subject
you
this,
what the basis of my ruling
But
is.
you are making an
Take
illegal
your seat,
decision.
Honorable
The decision
Malema.
you are taking is illegal. We cannot sit
Honorable
back and
Malema.
comply to an illegal decision. It's an
Honorable
incorrect.
Malema, take your seat.
Honorable Speaker, stop what you are doing. Please ask all of us, this matter, the president must start where he ended. We are the ones who demanded that the 21st of August must come back to this house. And this is what we asked for. And we're getting a raw deal. This can't be correct. We are saying to you, the matter of the 21st of August ended on the question of the EFF. And let the question of the EFF be answered. That's all what we're asking. We're not going to take a seat here on issues that are illegal here. You are being
Honorable
subjected
Malema.
to an illegal process.
I'm going to have to throw you out of the house if
How do you
are
throw
not
me?
going to
Which
agree.
rule? Which rule is that?
Madam
On which
Speaker.
rule?
Honorable
Point in
Stevenson.
the rule book. Which
Please
rule
take
are you
your seat,
applying?
Honorable
You
Malema.
keep
You are
on
not
taking illegal
recognized.
decisions. And the courts keep on reversing your decisions because they are illegal. You keep on taking illegal decisions. And we cannot sit back and allow every time you take a wrong decisions, we must go to court. The court has just ruled against you yesterday because of this conduct. Please, let's stick to the rules. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not here on your invitation. I'm elected to be here. And the EFF has been elected to be here. And its questions must be answered by the president. We have a right to hold the executive accountable. And that's what we're doing. So please, let's start where it ended. The Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC assured the EFF that we are going to start with your question. The Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC.
I wish to recognize Honorable Steenhuisen.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at the outset, I would just ask we don't throw anybody out the house today. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I also, and the Democratic Alliance also, wants to know when the President is going to pay back the money. We do want to know that. But Madam Speaker, we have to uphold and protect the rules of Parliament. And I would like to direct you in the guide to procedure, because you'll remember I took a point of order in this House a month or two ago around why those questions must be regarded as standing over. Now, if one looks at the guide to procedure on page 202, when it comes to supplementary questions, because we've also looked into this matter, because we want the President to pay back money. A question already answered cannot be held over for supplementaries. Now, this is based on a ruling that was delivered in the House by the then Deputy Speaker in 1994. It's contained in the annotated digest of rulings, so it forms part of the precedent and rulings of this House. So it says very clearly why questions already answered cannot be held over for supplementaries. And those are the rules. We can like them or we can't like them, but there are the rules as they exist at the moment, and we must protect them and defend them. And so we agreed in the programming committee, after having looked very carefully through the rules and all the implications, that we wanted the President to come back to this House, to this Parliament, and answer the questions that he didn't answer on that time. That question, unfortunately, had been reached. It had been reached. And it had been answered. The President had given an answer. Therefore, we can't start the session again with supplementaries. But, Madam Speaker, what we have decided to do then as a party is that the very next question session, when the President is back in the House for oral questions, we will be putting very specifically questions to him about when he's going to pay back the money. And we have to use the rules of Parliament to do that, because that's what we're here for as members of Parliament. But we cannot pick and choose rules and use rules in ways to suit agendas at a time, because it then undermines the entire fabric of the rules, and they then fall foul. So I would ask that we continue with the business of the House today. We want to ask the President the follow-up questions on those 3 questions that were not reached at that session, and we want to hold him accountable, because that's what we've been sent to this House to do.
So, thank you, Honorable Steenhuisen. Honorable Steenhuisen is
Order, Speaker.
confirming the situation as I had put forward in my ruling, that in fact was what all the party whips agreed.
Order, Speaker.
The party whips agreed the business of today is on the basis of the question of the answers of the President that he had forwarded to Parliament to questions 4, 5, and 6 of the 21st of August are the basis for today's continuation with those 3 questions that were not reached on the 21st of August, as Honorable Steenhuisen is explaining.
Order, Speaker.
And therefore, Honorable Maxine,
Can I-
don't interrupt me.
I'm just.
Please
for a
take
point
your
of order.
seat.
Just recognize me. At
No,
least.
I'm speaking. How can I recognize you at the same time as I'm speaking?
Just to say
I
I'm
am
noting
talking. Take you,
Just
sit
to
down.
say I'm noting you, Honorable Maxine, but I'm still speaking because I have rise on a point of order.
Take your seat.
Please, I can by noted, Speaker.
Now, today we proceed on the basis of those answers to the 3 outstanding questions. And when we start, when the president goes to the podium, we will go to item 4, question number 4, and take the supplementary questions, not the main answers, because the president already submitted, we published those answers. So we will take the 4 supplementary questions on each of those questions and the answers the president had given. And then we finish the business in terms of that issue. So, honorable members, I
Speaker.
think it has sorted, we know what the position of the EFF is.
I'm not talking on the position of EFF. I'm
What are you
talking as
talking
a
about?
member.
What are
I'm
you talking
saying,
about?
Madam Speaker, your ruling is incorrect. You can't just pretend as if the question that was posed by EFF on the 21st of August was answered. And I find it very difficult, Speaker, why are you protecting the president? The president is here. He must talk for himself without you to protect him. Maybe the president wants to answer the question that when is he going to pay back the money?
Honorable members, I think with what we have just said between Honorable Steenhuisen and myself, really the issue has been more than adequately canvassed, clarified, and we must reach a point on which we can proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I think Honorable Maxine is coming up with a different approach.
Honorable
And the
Malema, I
approach
have
is
not
that-
recognized you.
But you are not going to recognize me, Mus. That's how you are running this house. Steenhuisen gets recognized because the DA and the ANC agree that President Zuma must not pay the money. It's your agreement, it's your friendship. That's your arrangement.
On a point of order.
The DA and the ANC are saying President Zuma must not answer the question, when is he going to pay back the money? Honorable Maxine says, put the question to the president and let the president answer for himself. Let the president decide
Honorable
if he wants to
Malema.
answer that question or not. I
Honorable
thought this was
Malema.
a way forward.
Honorable Malema, I actually don't want to throw anyone out, but you can't continue
You don't
to
have such
disrupt
powers.
us.
You can't throw me out. You don't have such powers.
Don't try
You are
to
taking
disrupt.
illegal decisions. You can't throw me out. All we are saying, the president, you throw me out, you go to court. All I'm saying is that the president must answer if he wants to take the question. Let the president give us an answer. He's here. Stop being an overprotective over the president and creating an impression that the president is incapable of answering questions or responding on his behalf. Let the president take a podium. Let the president tell us if he wants to answer it or not.
Honorable Singh, I've seen you raise your hand for some time.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on a point of order, if I may.
Okay, let me take the point of order. Honorable Singh, I'll come back to you.
Madam Speaker, in terms of Rule 69, I wish to address you. The Democratic Alliance, and I made it very clear when I got up and prefaced my remarks, that we want President Zuma to pay back the money. It is therefore material misrepresentation, and obviously the Honourable Leader of the EFF has materially misunderstood what I said. But allow me to repeat it. The Democratic Alliance wants President Zuma to pay back the money. But when this House starts operating outside of the rules, then all of us become vulnerable, including the smaller parties. And that is why all of us in this House are duty-bound to protect and uphold the rules, even when they don't suit us. And that is why I made the point that I did.
On a point of privilege. On a point of privilege, Honorable Speaker. On a point of privilege.
I'd like to recognize Honorable Singh.
You see, Honorable Speaker, this is very, very difficult to take.
Honorable Singh.
Honorable Steenhuisen gets recognized, understood comprehensively. Ourselves, we are not. We are privileged to speak in this House. We are privileged for you to say to us, I recognize you, Honorable Ndlozi.
Please
We are
take your
privileged
seat.
to say when we rise on point of orders, speak on a point of order. But you don't do that to us. You don't do that to us. How do you expect us to stick to the rules when you do not? I feel racially segregated in this House. Yes. Yes. I said point of order, point of order, point of order. You did not recognize me. The Honorable Steenhuisen stands, says point of order once, and you take him. It must be noted today that we feel racially segregated by yourself, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hope you don't feel racially segregated by giving me an opportunity. Madam Speaker, I think the issue here is not the answer to the question. The moot point is whether the question was answered on the 21st of August. And in considering this matter at the Chief Whip's Forum and subsequently at the Programming Committee, we realized that in terms of the rules, the question was answered. Whether it was satisfactory, the answer was satisfactory or not, is another issue. So we contend that we should proceed with questions 4, 5, and 6, and we will all, as opposition parties, as we did when the report, Nkandla report was presented, we objected to the report vociferously. We will continue asking these searching questions. So I would like to contend, Madam Speaker, that we continue with questions 4, 5, and 6 fully. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Singh.
Honorable Speaker, it is incorrect to say the question was answered because there was a follow-up question by the UDM, which was the first follow-up question. And how do you know that question of the UDM was answered? It was the question from the UDM was not asked. Let the UDM be given an opportunity to make a follow-up question on the EFF question. And then that's it. Let the president take a podium, answer that question, we're done. That's all what we're asking for. There were going to be 3 supplementary questions. I don't know of any rule that says only the main question gets to be answered. The question says the president answer, 3 supplementary questions must be answered. The UDM was the first one on the queue. Let's continue with the UDM making a follow-up to our question. Because you don't know the question, and like Honorable Ndlozi said, maybe the other parties were going to bring a different angle to the question, which will lead to the president giving a relevant answer. And don't undermine what this guy says about racial discrimination. When we were taken out of this house, because we are black and young people, it was easy for you to order police to remove us here. But when the DA continued with that line, especially white male taking the platform to continue with that attitude, you treated them differently. And the only reason could be that they are white, because you are scared of white people. That's what you do.
Point of order.
Honorable members, I wish to recognize Honorable Pando, who has had his hand up. I will come back to quite a list of honorable members. Honorable Pando.
Thank you, Speaker. Her hand. I don't feel racially excluded, but I do feel that the rules of the House are being breached significantly. We are here to do the work of Parliament. I have appealed to the presiding officers before. When there is a resolution on the floor Could we deal with the resolution and finalize it and not allow disruptions that actually do not assist us in proceeding with the business of the House? There have been meetings of structures of Parliament. We cannot say today we don't recognize them, they are merely this, that, or the other. The program committee agreed on this program. A resolution has been tabled before this House. Could we move to decision on that resolution and expedite the business of this House and this Parliament? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pando, and we will do that. Honorable Mulder, Honorable Kubisa, Honorable Musi, would you still want to persist, or should we come back to the resolution that has been put to us? Okay. I now take us back to the draft resolution as has been put forward by the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, which is draft resolution number 3. I put the motion. Are there any objections? We note the objections of the EFF. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. And those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes.
want to call for division on this question.
Okay. A division having been called for, we ask that the bells be rung for 5 minutes. Honorable members, can we settle down? I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed is the one that will be recorded when the voting session has been closed by the chair. The question before the House is that the motion number 3 on the order paper by the Chief Whip of the majority party be agreed to. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the motion should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Are there any voting problems? I think there's a problem over there. Members of the table staff. There's another one over the DA. The voting session is now closed. Honorable members, the results are as follows. The yes, 316. The no, 18. The abstain, 3. Where the voting system did not work, the names of the honorable members will be added. So, honorable members, those are the results of the voting, and therefore the motion has been agreed to. Honorable members, the last motion on the order paper is also in the name of the Chief Whip of the majority party, the Honorable Khatebe.
Honorable Speaker, I move that, notwithstanding the hours of the sitting of the House as provided for in Rules 23.2, extended public committees may sit as agreed to by the Program Committee. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. Honorable members, I wish to inform the House that I have approved a request by the President of the Republic to make a statement on the violence in KwaZulu-Natal. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Members of Parliament, fellow South Africans, during the past week, we have witnessed shocking and unacceptable incidents of violence directed at foreign nationals in some parts of KwaZulu-Natal, which has now spread to some parts of Gauteng. Similar incidents had taken place in Soweto in January. No amount of frustration or anger can ever justify the attacks on foreign nationals and the looting of their shops. We condemn the violence in the strongest possible terms. The attacks violate all the values that South Africa embodies, especially the respect for human life, human rights, human dignity, and Ubuntu. Our country stands firmly against all intolerances such as racism, xenophobia, homophobia, and sexism. We extend our condolences to the families of all who have lost their lives and wish the injured a speedy recovery. We appeal for calm, an end to the violence and restraint of violent actions. Criminal elements should not be allowed to take advantage of the concerns of citizens to sow mayhem and destruction. Any problems or issues of concern to South African citizens must be resolved peacefully and through dialogue. The police have been directed to work round the clock to protect both foreign nationals and citizens, and to arrest looters and those committing acts of violence. We urge communities to assist the police by providing information on the incidents that have taken place in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal so that the perpetrators can be brought to justice. We thank religious leaders, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders who are providing humanitarian assistance to the displaced people. While we strongly condemn the attacks, we are aware of and are sympathetic to some of the issues that have been raised by affected South African citizens. We reiterate our view that South Africans are generally not xenophobic. If they were, we would not have such a high number of foreign nationals who have been successfully integrated into communities all over our country, in towns, cities, and villages. There are socio-economic issues that have been raised which are being attended to. These include complaints about illegal and undocumented immigrants in the country, the increase in the number of shops or small businesses that have been taken over by foreign nationals, and also perceptions that foreign nationals commit or perpetrate crime. We wish to emphasize that while some foreign nationals have been arrested for various crimes, it is misleading and wrong to label or regard all foreign nationals as being involved in crime in the country. In addition, not all foreign nationals who reside in our country are here illegally. Many in the country are legally and are legal and contribute to the economy and social development of the country. Many bring skills that are scarce, that help us to develop the economy, and are most welcome to live in our country. Others came to South Africa as refugees, having run away from conflict or wars in their countries of origin. In the same way that many South Africans left this country at some point and lived in other countries in the continent and beyond. We were treated with generosity, dignity, and respect by our brothers and sisters from the rest of the continent. We will never forget that hospitality and solidarity, the support of the frontline states in Southern Africa, and that of the Organization for African Unity was critical to the achievement of the freedom and democracy we are enjoying today. In this regard, government will continue to play its role and fulfill our responsibility and obligations as members of the African Union and the United Nations. Refugees and asylum seekers will be accorded support in line with the international law and protocols. With the support of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, we appeal to our people to support and protect refugees and asylum seekers. During the weekend, I deployed the ministers of police, state security, and home affairs to work with the KwaZulu provincial government to quell the violence and bring the situation to normality. They have done well, but the problem requires a much more comprehensive and substantive long-term intervention. I have therefore assigned the entire justice, crime prevention, and security cluster to work on this issue intensively, joined by the ministers of social development, trade and industry, and small business development. The security cluster and economic development and economic departments had already begun working on this matter following the Soweto incidents in January. I've now directed them to work faster and to engage affected communities, organizations, the ones that represent foreign nationals, businesses, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders to attend to the concerns raised on both sides. The objective is to avoid future incidents by improving relations and promoting peaceful coexistence between citizens and our brothers and sisters within the country and in the continent, as well as other foreign nationals. We will also be seeking cooperation and support from the affected foreign missions based in South Africa. The Minister of Home Affairs met with African heads of missions last week. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation will take these discussions forward as well in her engagements with the African heads of missions as well tomorrow on the 17th of April. We request members of Parliament to work with us as well in their constituencies to improve relations and promote peaceful coexistence between our people and the foreign nationals. Measures are also being put in place to improve controls and better regulate immigration into our country. In this regard, government is making progress with establishing the Border Management Agency, which will manage the border environment and all ports of entry. The capacity of the Department of Home Affairs is being improved to enable it to better handle migration issues, especially at the border posts. In this regard, the SANDF will transfer 350 soldiers to Home Affairs to work as immigration officers at border posts. Furthermore, the SANDF has deployed military personnel along the borderline in 7 provinces to prevent border crime activities and illegal border crossings. Fellow South Africans, we urge all of you to exercise calm and restraint. We also urge those who use social media to refrain from fanning the flames of violence on Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms. We all have a responsibility to promote social cohesion, peaceful coexistence, and good relations in the country. Foreign nationals help us to develop a cosmopolitan atmosphere, and we welcome their presence. We also want to see an increase in tourism figures from countries in the continent, and to share a lot of business opportunities as part of promoting sustainable economic development in the continent. The upcoming Africa Month celebrations in May provide an opportunity for us to further promote our African identity and good relations with our brothers and sisters from the continent. We look forward to the celebrations of Africa Day in every province on the 25th of May. Bakwethu siyakuza sithi asehliseni imimoya. Ukuhlasela kwabantu abangokufika kulelizwe akwemukelekile neze. Sathola usizo emazweni amaningi ngesikhathi silwela inkululeko yethu. Abazange basixoshe noma basihlukumeze. Siyazizwa izinkinga ezibekwayo njengokuthi abanye abangabokufika kulelizwe abanamvume yokuba seningizimu Afrika. Kubuye kukhalwe futhi nangobugebengu obenziwa ngabanye abangabokufika kanye nokuthatha amathuba okuhweba kanye nemisebenzi. Siyazizwa lezi zikhalo noma lokho kubekwayo futhi sizozilungisa. Kodwa siyagcizelela ukuthi akukho okungenza udlame lolu lwamukeleke ngalezo zizathu. Siyalugxeka kakhulu udlame. Sithi akube khona ukubuyisana nokukhuluma. Makukhona okubi sikubike emaphoyiseni. Thina njengohulumeni siyayisebenza le ndaba esizwayo yokuqinisa ezokuphepha. Siyayisebenza nayo endaweni zemncele ukuze abantu bangangeni noma kanjani emnceleni ngoba mhlambi ingavikelekile. Awukho umthetho kunoma yiliphi izwe othi abantu bayazingenela nje bengaphethe amaphepha. Lokho ke siyakusebenza. Sesitshale namasosha ukuze asize umnyango wezasekhaya okuyiwona ophathene nalomsebenzi. Honorable members, let us work together to provide support to all foreign nationals who have been affected by this violence. The Freedom Charter says there shall be peace and friendship. Our responsibility is to promote this legacy of peaceful coexistence and take it forward. We also reaffirm our responsibility to contribute to a better Africa and a better world. Let us work together to make our country a better place for all who live in it. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I call upon the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. President, Deputy President, honorable members, Bagaetsu, Dumelang. It's a very important day today in South Africa as we speak about this issue, and I believe Parliament must take an active and a leadership role in this matter. The matter of the President and paying back the money will be dealt with on another day. I believe today, honorable members, we need to be able to lead the people of this country. That is what they ask us to do, and we must take a firm stance in what is a very difficult situation that faces our country, such as xenophobia. Over the past 2 weeks, honorable members, South Africa has again witnessed a wave of xenophobic attacks across our country, with media being dominated by heartbreaking images of fellow human beings being subjected to the most cruelest form of treatment. In fact, I recall an image I saw last week that really touched me, not only as a South African, but as a husband and a parent. It was the image of a mother and a father fleeing an angry mob, carrying their children to safety. My heart goes out to those foreign nationals. See, growing up in Soweto, we have seen the capability of humans to inflict violence on one another. I don't believe, Bagaetso, re batla go boela koo. Re bone gore batho ba rona ba le ba tswa jang, ga re batla go boela morago. I have seen people being beaten, I've seen people being necklaced, I've seen their properties being destroyed. These images I shall never forget, and I pray that our children will never have to witness these images firsthand. Our humanity, botho ba rona, is slipping away from us, and we cannot allow that. We cannot stand by as fellow human beings are tortured and murdered. We condemn all acts of violence against foreign nationals. I understand the frustrations being felt by the people of South Africa, especially young people who are unemployed, who struggle to access opportunities to improve their lives. Jobs are scarce. Our economy continues to exclude millions of South Africans. But to focus this anger and frustration on a small group of foreign nationals who have become unfairly vilified and victimized does not address the cause of that frustration. We must not turn xenophobia into a political football, but we must not shy away from the root causes of the problem either. The root of this problem lies in our inability to bring about economic growth and decrease the inequality that plagues our nation. Unemployment today stands at 36.1%. 2 out of 3 of the people who are unemployed are young people. Many of these young people come from communities that are disadvantaged under apartheid and grew up without access to quality education. In every community I've been to, I've met young people and young women who share the same story of economic exclusion. It is in fact this hopelessness that at times results from unemployment that drives drug use at times and criminality in communities that sometimes underlies xenophobic attacks. Furthermore, honorable members, we are clear that our borders are porous, and it's fundamentally because the South African Defence Force is understaffed and underserviced due to a shortfall of 700 billion rands. But while these factors may in some ways help explain the situation, they cannot be used as an excuse to resorting to violence or criminality. There can be no justifications for human beings inflicting pain and suffering on other human beings. Instead of acknowledging these socio-economic root causes of our tensions in our communities, there are people in powerful positions attempting to shift the blame or even condone the criminality and xenophobia. Leaders who make statements that in fact lead to these situations, whether they be royalty or politically connected, cannot be allowed to get away without the responsibility of their actions and the statements they make. Therefore, honorable members, we must never forget that during the dark days of apartheid, African nations opened their borders to South Africans involved in the struggle for freedom. Yet we now vilify those who flee persecution and oppression and make them scapegoats for the real rage we feel from economic exclusion. We need an immigration policy that recognizes that the rights of refugees and asylum seekers are based on our commitment to the International Convention on the Prevention of Rights of all migrant workers and members of their families. And we need to make sure that our borders are protected so that those who seek to make a life in our country can do so with the correct processes and procedure. But if we want to really solve the root causes of xenophobia, we need to address the issue of unemployment, honorable members. We need to support the growth of small businesses and create jobs. Small business owners are key to growing our economy, but we need to make sure that they're given the support to do so. We need to make it easier for those with good ideas and ambition to get their enterprises off the ground. In order to succeed, small businesses require capital to allow them to get off the ground and the skills needed to manage a small business. That's why, as the DA, we advocate for an establishment of a national venture capital fund to provide initial funding for startups and early businesses. Township economy must be revitalized, President. This will enable the people to get access to capital and to fund startup enterprises. We need to empower entrepreneurs to be able to put together business plans and budgets. And we can begin by teaching business skills in our schools. We must equip young people with basic knowledge of maths, accounting, and economics and educate them on how they can maximize the power of collective buying. And ultimately, there needs to be a greater rollout for small business incubators, where entrepreneurs can access and share resources in a supportive environment and empower them through assisting them with the cost of training and advisory services. Bagaetsho, ke a utlwa batho ba rona. Re utlwa botlhoko ga batho ba rona ba bona mathata ko ba nnang teng. Ga re bona gore go lwantsha, ga go thuse ope gore re lwantshe le batho ba ba sa tsweng mo lefatsheng la rona. Ga re leba, re tshwantse re itse gore la re na le mathata, we cannot allow people to brutalize others. Foreign business owners are not the enemy. Perhaps we need to ensure that the real enemy in our society is a culture of corruption that takes from the poor and gives to the rich. A culture that reserves opportunities for the elite and excludes everybody else. In fact, a culture where sometimes we leave dialogue as the last resort, not the first, when we want to engage issues. Speaker, if we don't work together to root out this culture, we stand a chance of ending, if we work together to root out this culture, we stand a chance of ending xenophobia and restoring humanity in our society. Bagaetsho, in 1994, President Mandela made a commitment that never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience oppression of one by another. Let us honor his memory by honoring that dream. Let's dare never forget, botho, gore motho ke motho ka batho. Let us remind ourselves on that, and therefore we cannot at any point ever perpetuate racism in any culture, in any society. We are all human beings. We are all Africans. Ke a leboga. I thank you very much.
Honorable Malema. Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker and the President of the Republic. Mr. President, Kaspedi bare, pinyana ge re penge kwele pinye kgolo. So, the state being the elder of the whole of society becomes responsible for all the violence meted against our foreign nationals. It was through the state that our people were taught that resolution to differences should be through violence. It was under your leadership that when you disagreed with people in Marikana, you killed them. Because you never believed in peaceful resolution of differences. When people had problems in Relela, you killed them. When people had problems in Mututlung demanding water, you killed them. When Tatane protested against this state, you killed him. When there were differences not so long ago in this parliament, you applied violence against the leadership of the EFF. When your friends marched to Lituli House, the DA, you responded by violence. When the structures of the EFF were emerging at the lower levels, you responded to that through your lower structures through violence. Mr. President, you taught our people that everything else must be resolved through violence. And therefore you must take full responsibility for having misled our nation that peaceful resolution does not exist and that those who do not listen, they must be whipped into line. You have lost control of the country because you have lost control of your own family. Your own son continues to say these people must be killed. You stand up here and you do not say anything. The King Zweletini has been misinterpreted as he says. We accept that explanation. But you do not take a platform to ask the king to call upon the people of KwaZulu-Natal and everywhere else, particularly those who could have misunderstood him, to refuse to engage in violent activities. I must never be misinterpreted to be saying the king is responsible for that. But that interpretation was misinterpreted by the media, and the people understood him to be saying that. How can you rule the country when you cannot rule over your own family? And your son is such a typical example of a family member that you cannot whip into line. We have a responsibility from these incidences of xenophobia to teach our people that peaceful resolution is a sustainable solution to every problem we have. Mr. President, you come here, you want to condemn violence against xenophobia, but the Cubans have taught us that body language speaks volume than prepared speech. You come with a prepared speech, your body doesn't suggest any other leader who's concerned about the killings in KwaZulu-Natal. But when you were defending the spending in Nkandla, your body language was very strong than when you were condemning the violent activities in Nkandla. Fellow South Africans, we need each other. Let us not kill each other. There is no country in Africa that can survive in isolation. Not even the USA can survive in isolation. We need each other, South Africans. Let us not kill fellow Africans. We are one thing. Africa is one. We must refuse the artificial borders imposed on us by colonizers which have led to the division of Africa. Africa, we are one.
Honorable Buthelezi.
Excellency the President, Your Excellency Deputy President, honorable ministers, honorable deputy ministers, honorable members of the Assembly. Why are we slow to arrest violence when it's targeted against foreigners? I ask Your Excellency because the violence that started in Spingo 2 weeks ago has already spilled over into Johannesburg, CBT, Soweto, Germiston, Durban, Phoenix, Verulam. Why are we only now hearing an executive statement on violence in KwaZulu-Natal? Our country's past has taught us that when violence flares up, the response of leaders must be immediate and unequivocal.
When there is a state silence, people die. In 2008, when our people necklaced Zimbabwean refugees and went on a murderous rampage against foreign nationals, it was I who spoke up on behalf of South African leadership. It was I who apologized on behalf of our nation and urged our people to desist. Now, when people are again living in fear, running for their lives and watching their houses and businesses burned to the ground, it is I who immediately went to the hotspots and apologized on behalf of our nation. I know I've been ridiculed by the largest newspaper that I was punching above my weight. But both President Mandela and President Mbeki gave me the responsibility of Home Affairs. I'm very close to this problem. I know it's not simple. South Africa's leaders are slow to act, and it fuels the fire of violence. When you stand amongst nations of the world, how can we feel anything but shame? I remember visiting President Kaunda in 1974, after we were invited together with the late Dr. Oliver Tambo, our leader, to Addis Ababa to talk about sanctions. And in Kenya, we discussed the matter, and Mr. Tambo said, I must go because we shouldn't disagree on a public platform together. And we traveled together to Lusaka, where I thank President Kaunda for giving sanctuary to our political leaders. How can I face him today? I visited President Nyerere as well to thank Tanzania for welcoming our exiles. We were part of Africa then. And are we part of Africa now? Are we not ashamed when Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma heads the African Union? Let's put ourselves in her shoes today. When we have bilateral and multilateral trade agreements with SADC that secures billions of rands for South Africa, when we deploy our defense force to keep peace in the DRC. Indeed, how can our peacekeeping missions on this continent have any authority or credibility when we refuse to deploy the defense force on our soil, though lives are being lost? Earlier this week, I called for a peacekeeping intervention by the defense force to stop the violence from spreading. But the Honorable Minister of Police disagreed, and the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal scoffed. It will be over by Thursday. Well, Mr. President, it's now Thursday.
Your time
4
is
days
expired,
ago, hostile dwellers went the rampage Mashu, and the Times newspaper journalist who is Indian was told, "Leave or die, Indian dog." Are Indians foreigners too in our country? Our country is burning. Last week, a white businessman told me that his 11-year-old son asked whether whites are going to be driven out next. We're allowing a reign
Honorable
of terror,
Shenge,
Mr. President.
With respect, sir, your time has expired.
I'm sorry that I was not able to talk about my king because I think he's used as a pretext by some people.
Honorable Shilembe.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the National Freedom Party strongly condemns the violent xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals in South Africa. We are dismayed at the displacement of thousands of people and destruction and looting of properties. We are in particular deeply saddened by the tragic loss of lives. Xenophobic violence is not new in South Africa, Honorable Deputy Speaker. In 2008, we witnessed the violent and destructive nature of these attacks, and again in the beginning of this year. The questions we have to ask ourselves are, what is the cause or causes of these attacks? What has government response been to these attacks? How are we going to address the causes of xenophobic attacks? The causes of xenophobic attack are complex and must be viewed holistically. It is, however, possible to identify several contributing factors. One, failure to maintain the rule of law. People see they can engage in violence without fear of arrest or successful prosecution. The collapse of proper border control mechanism, which allowed millions of people to gain entry to South Africa illegally. Corruption in the state sector, which has filtered down into the various government departments, and the resulting anger by South Africans at immigrants with illegal documents getting access to services, high levels of unemployment which result in competition amongst South Africans and foreign nationals for employment, lack of educating South Africans on the reason why many foreigners are in South Africa legitimately. These factors, Honorable Deputy Speaker, are major contributors to xenophobic attacks in South Africa. The response of government has been deafening silence and a reluctance to acknowledge the nature of the attacks of xenophobic. It is only during the past few days that government has acknowledged the true nature of these attacks. The way forward will not be easy, but as the National Freedom Party, we say that we need action, not words. The NFP would like to see the state deploy all its resources to quell the violence and assist those who had been displaced by the attacks. In the long term, we believe that the effective border control measures must be implemented to prevent a further influx of illegal immigrants to South Africa, and current illegal foreign nationals are repatriated. We also propose an intensive government education program to explain to South African citizens the legitimate reasons why some foreign nationals are and should be allowed to stay and work here in South Africa. I thank you.
Honorable Holomisa.
Our Deputy Speaker, the Honorable President and Deputy President, honorable members, the UDM would like to add its voice in condemning the acts of violence against foreign nationals. We extend our condolences. A country with high levels of poverty, high unemployment rate, high levels of inequality, blended with leadership whose attention is on filling their pockets through corrupt activities, breeds all social evils, including criminality. Compounding the situation is that the African agenda we were once its champion has taken a back seat. We must agree that indeed the violence we see today in KZN with a potential to spread to other provinces can be best described as reckless, inhuman, barbaric, and criminal. This debate must contribute to the stoppage of this inhumanity in the history of our democracy. We must also acknowledge that the levels of lawlessness in our country are increasing daily. This has to come to a stop if we are to redeem our image and attract investors as a country. To address this situation, the following steps need to be taken. An immediate presidential visit to the Kingdom of the Zulus nation has to be done immediately after this House concludes this debate to share with the King the spirit of the House on this important matter. Amalala ke sabe si ready uba sikhaphe sike siyophunga ikofu nesilo samabandla. We must contain the current situation in KZN by, amongst others, enforcing the law to the fullest. Such a step must be communicated to all that South Africa is not a lawless society. The state of our intelligence services requires urgent attention because these activities should have been detected before their occurrence. Special police units as well as special courts to deal with incidents of sporadic lawlessness must be established nationally. A comprehensive audit must be conducted on foreigners already in our country. What are they doing, where, how, and with whom are they engaged in those activities? This will help to expose those who are in the country for wrong reasons, like corrupt activities, including drug and human trafficking.
Honorable Holomisa, your time has expired, sir.
Thank you.
Honorable Milton.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, you are and you become what you think. That's true of a nation as well. What is in our heads? What is in our mind? After the 1994 election, various heads of state visited South Africa. They stood at this very podium, and their message was basically the same. They all said they were privileged to speak in this parliament in South Africa, the giant of Africa. In this country, we were a rainbow nation, full of hope and full of expectations of our future. The Freedom Front Plus wants to condemn these xenophobia attacks with the strongest terms. There is simply no place in South Africa for these kinds of acts. Completely unacceptable. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it seems that there's an evil spirit in this country running around at the moment. Where are the positive values? The values of respect, of honesty, of integrity, of discipline. We don't see that. What do we see? We see greed, we see disrespect, we see theft, we see corruption, we see lawlessness. Look at the Freedom Charter, and the President referred to that as well, where it clearly states, and it says, all national groups shall be protected by law against insults to their race and national pride. The preaching and practice of national, race, or color discrimination and contempt shall be punishable crime. It seems that these acts are quite well orchestrated and planned. But the problem, Honourable Speaker, is things don't just happen by chance. There's a causal link. It is true, and the question should be asked, why did this happen in KZN? Why did it start there? The fact of the matter is, there's a quote, and you can go and have a look at that. You can go and listen to the tape yourselves, where it was said by the Zulu king at this stage, unfortunately, we ask foreign nationalists to pack their belongings and to go back to their countries. That was said. And then we should not act surprised when things happen. Yesterday, in today's newspaper, the Daily News, the following is said, and it's being reported in terms of what happened in Pietermaritzburg yesterday, and I quote, we saw 30 people armed with knobkieries and sticks. They struck cars gridlocked in traffic with their weapons, screaming at Indian and white motorists to fuck off, and chanting, Africa is for Africans, end of quote. Do we realize, do we understand where we are going to if we as leaders do not take responsibility? But words have meaning. It's necessary that leaders in South Africa should reach out, take hands in terms of being wise in terms of things. Mr. President, with all due respect, your quote in January with regard to Jan van Riebeeck also did not help. You may say that it's historical so-and-so, but things should be seen in context. I believe there are enough people in this country who are moderate, who understand the seriousness of this situation.
Your time is
Let them take hands and take this country forward. There is no place for radicalism. Thank you.
Honourable Lekota.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On December 10, 1996, speaking at the signing of the Constitution into law at Sharpeville, President Mandela declared, and I quote, by our presence here today, we solemnly honor the pledge we made to ourselves and to the world that South Africa shall redeem herself and thereby widen the frontiers of human freedom. As we close a chapter of exclusion and a chapter of heroic struggle, we reaffirm our determination to build a society of which each of us can be proud as South Africans, and as citizens of the world, unquote. We who walk in his footsteps can look at ourselves and our situation today. We have failed to bear the burden of that promise. President Thabo Mbeki, for his part, warned that the nation in a state of calamitous drift. From drift, we are noticeably urging towards anarchy because racism and Afrophobia and xenophobia have bared their vicious fangs, and we are deeply ashamed at how low we have sunk. We have one of the largest and costless governments in the world. Sadly, it is grossly ineffectual. We should be valuing our multiculturalism and Pan-Africanism, not devaluing and despising them. For these ideals to root themselves in our native soil, the government needs to espouse a Pan-Africanism more vigorously than it is doing. We need to turn resentment into appreciation for what these economic migrants bring to South Africa. We must also temper our hostility by recalling the warmth with which African countries received many of us when we too were political refugees. We need awareness campaigns, and these must be led by the General Secretary of the African National Congress. Without an active promotion of Africanism, tolerance, and integration of migrants into our communities, our increasingly tarnished image in Africa will alienate us. We have a lot to lose. The Congress of the People sees Afrophobia, xenophobia as nothing but Afrophobia and xenophobia, and utterly condemns it. We are also critical of those who carelessly or overtly fan the flames of hatred by word or deed. Let us act decisively and purposefully to end Afrophobia and xenophobia. Most importantly, let us make good the promise of Nelson Mandela to us, to Africa, and to the world. Now more than ever before, we desperately and urgently need an inspired and visionary leadership. I thank you.
Honorable Mishwe.
Deputy Speaker, Honorable President, and honorable members, on behalf of the African Christian Democratic Party, I firstly want to repent before the Almighty God on behalf of this, my nation, for the barbaric attacks and killings of innocent foreign nationals who came to seek refuge in our country. And secondly, I want to ask for forgiveness from those nations whose citizens we have persecuted, attacked, and showed hatred to for having come to our borders seeking refuge, help, and a better life. Thirdly, I want to convey our heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of those who have lost their loved ones in the madness we witnessed these past few weeks, and also wish a speedy recovery to all those who have been injured in these senseless and barbaric killings. Deputy Speaker, the ACDP is deeply embarrassed and ashamed of what has been done to foreign nationals in our country. We strongly condemn these xenophobic attacks, which have once again tarnished our image in the eyes of the world. Since the advent of democracy, South Africa became a beacon of hope for many, a model of an example for the rest of the world because of our willingness to show forgiveness and reconciliation. But the recent attacks in KwaZulu-Natal and now in Gauteng are changing that and are threatening foreign investor confidence in our growing tourism industry. It is important, therefore, that we look at what should be done to prevent further attacks on foreign nationals in our country. The first vital thing that needs to happen for us to see change is that this parliament must start setting a good example to the nation. The disrespect displayed and vulgar language sometimes used by some members of this House is disgraceful and must come to an end. Many impressionable young people who watch parliamentary debates are tempted to emulate what they see their leaders doing in this place. If there is no respect, tolerance, and ethical behavior here, then it won't be found in our schools and our communities. Secondly, those radical members and political parties that are popularizing and encouraging a culture of disrespect, rebellion, lawlessness, anger, intolerance must be confronted and told to stop poisoning the minds of desperate and vulnerable South Africans. I believe that some members of this House must first deal with their anger before they will be able to successfully help to build a strong, united, democratic, and prosperous nation. Thirdly, government must beef up the intelligence department that should be able to establish who the instigators of these organized attacks on foreign nationals are. get the police to arrest them, and do a thorough investigation that would lead to the conviction and incarceration of those found guilty. Lastly, I want to appeal to church leaders to be more proactive in fulfilling their role in society as ministers of reconciliation, and encourage all churches to join together in praying and building this nation so that it can be peaceful as it is expected. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says,
Honorable Member, I'm afraid your time has expired, sir. Honorable Gallo.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, Honorable President, and the members. The AIC, believing in African humanism, freedom, liberty for all human beings, is saddened by the unacceptable xenophobic happenings in some parts of our beloved country. The AIC is also joining the peace-loving South Africans in condemning these unholy happenings, which are indeed damaging the image of our country. But, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we cannot run away from the fact that the ANC government, because of the lack of value-based leadership, has dismally failed the people of this country, more especially the poorest of the poor. By so saying, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we are not ignoring the cosmetic changes that the ANC government has done since 1994. Hunger and poverty have always been the first reason for mass protests and revolutions throughout the world. South Africa is no exception. The poor masses of this country are very angry because they are neglected by the very leaders they trusted. It can't be correct for you as a ruling class to continue enriching yourselves and your loved ones, while the ordinary people will continue kissing the dust and scavenging from the dust bins. This is xenophobic violence we are talking about today, in a way is perpetrated by the government by not taking care of the business interests of the country's citizens. The AIC is of the view that the government must protect the business interests of the nation. Those who are coming from outside into the country for business opportunities must be restricted. Those who came into the country as refugees must be restricted into refugee camps until the situation in their countries is addressed. Those who came into the country illegally must be repatriated back to their countries. The AIC commends the Malawi government for the bold steps it has taken to ensure that the people of Malawi are repatriated back home. The big brother, President Robert Mugabe, must do the same. In conclusion, the AIC is concerned about the xenophobic violence in South Africa and calls upon the SADC leadership to encourage the leaders of the affected countries to do the right thing of repatriating their citizens back to their countries, as the Malawi government is doing. This will go a long way, Honorable Deputy Speaker, in averting a civil war in our country. I thank you.
Honorable Kloamo.
Honorable President, first of all, Honorable President, our country is becoming a country without law. What I want to say, Honorable President, is that what we are experiencing is a country without laws being observed, because it's not only xenophobia that we are experiencing land grabs, defacing of statues without following proper processes. We have irresponsible leaders who their method of survival is manipulation and inciting of civil strife. We know that our people feel betrayed, so because they see their leaders living opulent life without caring about them. Xenophobia is the result of a deep-rooted socio-economic problems. But this country, when we established it in 1994, it was established based on hope. So that hope is lost because most of the leaders, particularly the black elite, when they go to government, they go there to enrich themselves, to fill their pockets. Some of the leaders in this house, they actually encourage unlawfulness without shame. They even go out, is their method, is their political tool to use our people as guinea pigs to achieve their objectives. If we want to build a country that will be able to survive, we can't do that without the world. We are a global world. But I must say that all leaders of this house must also know that we are not here for ourselves. Even when we are outside, we are there for our people. What we do, the parties that we do, the way we behave, it reflects either good or badly on us. Our people are watching, and they learn from us. If we steal, they will think it's the right way, they will also steal. If we loot, whether we use strategy to loot, they will loot, but in a very simple way. So I'm humbly saying, honorable leaders, from now, let us lead by example. Let us be the leaders of Nelson Mandela. Even if we differ, we should all respect the constitution of this country. Therefore, our people will also know that the only way to survive is through hard work. Thank you.
Honorable Mbinda, and this is the honorable member's maiden speech.
Our Deputy Speaker, Honorable President and Deputy President, and honorable members, the PAC obviously condemns the killings of the African nationals. We cannot, as Africans, as African people, attack others on the basis that they are not South Africans. To us as PAC, South Africa is an integral part of the whole continent, which is Africa, and it cannot be isolated from the rest of Africa. That is why we always call for a united Africa. The focus now should be looking at the root causes of this Afrophobia and work out realistic solutions. PAC welcome Judge Pile, who is to investigate the causes. Our contention, therefore, is that a government is responsible for bankrupting African informal trade through tariff charges, harassment of informal businesses by the police, failure to support the informal vendors in townships and villages by government. Our people cannot afford bulk stocking, hence the rise for Afrophobia. Amapolisa must do their job in the border gates. We cannot have an intelligence that is not able to detect activities of this nature. This is a reflection of poor immigration policy, and if we are saying it is not poor, then someone is not doing his job. We cannot have a situation where we can't trace the whereabouts of these immigrants. To catch them from the street, we cannot impose a DOM pass system by asking them to produce IDs. That's what the current government is doing. A driver's license could also be used in certain instances. We therefore propose that informal sector business be regularized and an investigation to be conducted on who is funding the African nationals. There is impunity and defiance by Afrophobic and looting gangs. And then Amnesty International's listed 3 things that must be done. Do not use the phrase illegal immigrants when dealing with xenophobia, because by doing so you create confusion. And then the government should deal strongly with those that are in our country illegal. Prosecute and sentence those that are found guilty for criminal activities.
Robert Sobukwe declared that there is only one race to which we all belong, and that is a human race. That is why we say Africa for Africans. That is the slogan that we must keep on pushing, so that even our fellow brothers, they understand that
Honourable
they
Member,
cannot kill
your time
their
has expired.
own brothers and sisters. Izwe lethu.
The APC is not here. Honorable, the Minister of Home Affairs.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable President, Deputy President, honorable members. It is with deep regret that we join the Honorable President, the honorable members, as well as the rest of the peoples of our country today, in both condemning the violent attacks on foreign nationals in our country and in expressing our sincerest regrets to fellow African and other nationals in South Africa who have been the victims of these savage acts by criminals. Today is not the occasion for cheap political point scoring. We need somber minds and solid leadership. From the outset, we would like to make the emphatic statement that most foreign nationals in our country make a very positive contribution to our society. First and foremost, immigrants contribute towards our country's economic development by investing in the economy, supplying critical skills, including in our health facilities, teaching our children and youth in schools and universities, and thus transferring knowledge and skills. They pay tax, which contributes towards expanding the national fiscus, whilst many still have to send remittances back home and yet still sustain themselves and their livelihoods in South Africa. Furthermore, many nationals of our neighboring countries travel to South Africa daily, weekly, or monthly to buy groceries or purchase goods from our retail shops to go and sell in their own countries, paying toll fees on our roads, and thus contributing towards revenue generation that has been so vital to increasing government social and economic expenditure to benefit South Africans. Consequently, the allegation that all foreign nationals in South Africa do not pay tax is as preposterous as the assumption that all South Africans do pay tax. Secondly, by entering our country through our designated ports of entry as regular migrants, and by complying with both our immigration and other legislation, most foreign nationals contribute towards enhancing South Africa's national security and ensure that we manage the visitors in our midst whilst protecting them in our country as well as South Africans. Recently, we have enhanced our legislation and regulations in order the more effectively to protect South Africa by managing and minimizing the risks to our country arising out of the phenomenon of international migration. Thirdly, immigrants in our country contribute towards nation building and enhance our social cohesion by bringing more diversity to our nation and creating more understanding of the diverse nature, not only of Africans of Africa, but also of the peoples of the world. By having new groups of immigrants in South Africa in the recent years, we have become a more cosmopolitan country, and our understanding of who we are as a nation has been deepened based on the new complex dynamics that have enriched our nation. Today, for example, you have new entrants into the South African nation that are not rigidly part of an African majority, but who are part of both an African majority and the immigrant minority at the same time, whose home languages are none of those we have come to know over the centuries of the formation of our nation. Fourthly, immigrants have integrated South Africa into the global community, and African immigrants in particular have made South Africa an integral part of the African continent that we rightfully are. Our country, every country on the continent can find its nationals on our shores, and in some instances we now have South Africans of descent in fellow African countries. We as a people are better and more humane today than we ever have been before because of these fellow Africans and peoples of elsewhere in the world that have chosen voluntarily and mostly through regular means to live amongst us and make South Africa their permanent home. we must accordingly be very clear that immigrants are welcome in South Africa. To what then do we owe the recent spate of barbaric attacks on African immigrants in particular? If it was concern about the shops owned by foreign nationals, why have human beings been attacked and ruthlessly uprooted from their homes through nothing but savage methods? The irrefutable fact is that it is wrong to claim that all immigrants are undocumented and therefore illegal in South Africa. It is wrong to claim that all undocumented immigrants are African and that all African immigrants are undocumented and therefore illegal. It is wrong to claim that all immigrants do not pay tax and therefore are a drain on the South African economy. And it is wrong to claim that all African immigrants commit crime in South Africa. African tourists have increased by leaps and bounds in South Africa, arriving through OR Tambo International Airport and other land ports of entry. The towns of Nkomazi, Musina, Fixbeck, and Nelspruit, Polokwane, Mangaung, benefit enormously from the revenue they generate from our neighbors. Most immigrants in our country, particularly the African immigrants, enter South Africa properly as regular migrants with documents and therefore are in this country legally. Where some have entered the country irregularly, without documents and illegally, the immigration services of the Department of Home Affairs have been deporting them yearly at the cost of hundreds of millions of rand per annum. As we speak, having transferred the Border Coordinating Committee from SARS to the Department of Home Affairs, plans are afoot to establish the Border Management Agency. Towards this effect, the BMA legislation should be submitted to the House during the course of this year. Whilst the BMA must not be viewed as a panacea to the correction of all the ills of our borderline, its specialized capacity will be of great import towards border management. Whilst working on the BMA establishment, the department will soon launch a new campaign to enhance border management, which will focus on integrated approaches under the BCOCC and the BMA Steering Committee. At the same time, in addition to the regulations announced in May last year, the department is working hard towards a new international migration policy framework, which will create new migration management approaches. The new policy framework will be more clearer, amongst others, on how to manage economic migration, address the question of the regulation of shops owned by foreign nationals, and ensure that foreign nationals whose visas entitle them to work in South Africa are not employed outside the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. In addition to this and the other measures mentioned by the President earlier, the Department of Home Affairs will be spending 118 million rand over the next 3 years, recruiting inspectors in order to increase its inspectorate capacity to detect and prosecute companies and businesses employing undocumented migrants or those without work visas. 170 inspectors will be recruited in year 1, increasing marginally over the next 2 years. Furthermore, the department and the National Treasury will soon announce plans to overhaul the physical and systems infrastructure at our ports of entry. However, all of this notwithstanding, we must reject with the contempt it deserves any notion that all immigrants, particularly African immigrants, are criminals. The fact that there are South Africans trafficking drugs and consequently serving long-term jail sentences in the prisons of Thailand, China, Brazil, Peru, and elsewhere in the world does not mean that all South Africans are consequently drug traffickers or that nationals of those countries must chase South Africans down the streets of their countries. We must all be very concerned about the repercussions of this criminality, as they might spark diplomatic as well as retaliatory actions against South Africans in other countries. This is why we have already met the diplomatic corps twice to express very strongly the views of the South African government on behalf of most South Africans who detest xenophobia and Afrophobia to the core, and are due to meet them again this coming Friday for an update on the steps we have taken to deal with this situation. We are working very closely with the provincial and metro governments towards this endeavor. Yesterday, alongside the Premier, the MECs, and the mayor and deputy mayor of eThekwini, we visited some of the flashpoints and addressed people on the ground, rallying them behind the peace effort. We have also met with the religious leaders and other stakeholders towards the same objective. We have visited the temporary shelters for displaced people, expressed our regrets about this situation, and talked to them about our plans to bring the violence to an end and facilitate their reintegration. As I speak to you, in some of the communities, the reintegration process has already begun. We have listened to the displaced people and their complaints, and we will attend to them. We have committed that we will assist those who wish to be voluntarily repatriated to return home safely and with little hindrance. Today's march in Durban, attended even by people from as far away as Gauteng, should further demonstrate the humanity and African solidarity of the people of South Africa. We must emphasize the point that not all South Africans are involved in this savagery, and many of us who have friends from outside South Africa, some of whom are now naturalized South Africans, and those of us who have traveled the continent a bit, know just how hardworking and honest fellow African people are. We must echo the President's call that concerns must be resolved peacefully and through dialogue, and we wish to add that our people must refer all their grievances to the state. We know the challenges of our people, especially the youth who face unemployment and economic marginalization. We know that these are the most urgent challenges facing the youth of our country. But to address these, we need to resolve them through the institutions and programs we have agreed to, and not necessarily not by chasing foreign nationals out of the country, chasing them down the streets and committing acts of criminality and barbarism. However, this too is not an excuse for the cruelty we have witnessed. The state must and will stamp its authority in acts of violence and lawlessness, whether it concerns foreign nationals being attacked or those that are invading land. Today, Honorable Malema has allowed us to peep into his heart, to see and hear what he and his party are planning. This government is ready, and we will act to root lawlessness out. Honorable Malema is probably the best student of the school of nonsense, as he can stand here and peddle it quite easily, talking about the president and how he is leading his family, and not referring to himself and how he relates with his own father. The disrespect he shows to his father, he now transfers it to the president. That must end. Thank you.
Honorable members, that concludes the party responses to the statement by the President. On behalf of the presiding officers, we would like to express our condolences to families of those foreign nationals who lost their lives, but also to the wish that peaceful coexistence is what we expect of all people of our country and those who are in our country legally and otherwise. We now wish to proceed to the next item, which is today's order paper, as is addressed to the President. Questions to the President. In line with the motion moved by the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, we now proceed to supplementary questions to questions number 4, asked by Honorable H.H. Malchus. I would like to remind members that they may press the talk button on their desks if they wish to ask a supplementary question. Is there
thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
President?
Oh, sorry, Honorable Deputy Speaker, I didn't know I have to start.
Yes.
Maar ek wil net dankie. Can I start?
Yeah. Proceed, Honorable Malchus.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Ek wil net dankie sê vir ons president vir die geskrewe antwoord wat hy gegee het op die vraag wat ek
Honorable
vir u
member.
gevra het.
Hold on a little. Members are the president is putting on his ear. Go ahead.
En hierdie
Oh, the
vraag,
honorable members, you are not on the floor, she is. Don't
Hierdie
tell her what
vraag-
to do.
is nog toepaslik vandag. En ek wil hom net bedank en vir die ANC bedank dat dit wanneer dit by die formele erkenning van die Khoi en die San leierskap en gemeenskap kom, dat ons so hard op het werk. When it comes to your question, before I speak to our community again, because there are certain things I would like to speak to them about. President, your answer has 3 elements. Element number 1 speaks to the Traditional Affairs Bill.
Honorable member, please
that
ask your
makes-
question.
I'm
Your-
going to ask.
Ask your question quickly.
All right, fine. My question then is on the 3rd element. What progress has been made thus far on the Traditional Affairs Bill? Thank you.
Honorable President.
Well, the Traditional Affairs Bill was revised during 2014 based on the comments received after the publication of the bill in the Government Gazette in September 2013. The comments were carefully analyzed and many have contributed towards the improvement of the bill. The bill will now be known as the Traditional and Khoi and San Leadership and Governance Bill. The Traditional and Khoi and San Leadership Bill intends to consolidate and repeal the existing national legislation relating to traditional leadership, namely the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework Act of 2003 and the National House of Traditional Leaders Act of 2009. The bill addresses the limitations of the existing legislation and provides uniformity in respect of traditional leadership matters. It makes provision for the statutory recognition of Khoi and San communities and leaders, provided that they meet the criteria for recognition as contained in the bill. This is the first time ever in the history of our country that provision is made in legislation for the official recognition of Khoi and San people. In addition to the recognition of the Khoi and San communities and leaders, the bill also makes provision for the establishment of the Khoi and San Council for each recognized Khoi and San community. It also makes provision for the establishment of an advisory committee on Khoi and San matters to assist government with the recognition process. The bill also provides for the integration of Khoi and San leaders into existing houses of traditional leaders, which will in future be known as houses of traditional and Khoi and San leaders. As far as the advisory committee on Khoi and San matters is concerned, the members will have to be experts in, amongst others, Khoi and Son Customs and Customary Law invited to nominate persons to be considered as members of the advisory committee. The bill will be resubmitted to Cabinet for final consideration soon. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Oh, Speaker.
The Honorable Mhlongo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mongameli, why is the government taking so much long time in excluding the Khoi and the San community? Mongameli, why is the government taking so long in addressing the exclusion of Khoi and San community? For an example, when are we going to expect to be informed about the government plans policy regarding the exclusion of these communities? Almost a year later, we remain in the dark. Asazi ukuthi kwenzakalani, Mongameli. Mr. President, until now, land claim has been limited to date 1913 because of bad 1913 Native Land Act. But this cutoff date has resulted in exclusion of Khoi and San communities from this process of land restitution due to the fact that they were dispossessed earlier than 1913. Mongameli, Minister Ngwita announced during last year that the government will consider the policy that will address exclusion of these communities.
The time for your question is over. Thank you. Honorable President.
Well, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, the issue of Khoi and San is not a simple matter. I think is one of the oldest problems in the country with regard to colonization and question of the land being taken away. I think what we have done in the democratic country and government has been to address the issue of Khoi and San straight, which was not ever discussed before. And we are in the process, therefore, hence I'm reporting about the bill, that whilst they had been excluded from other houses, we are now moving on a bill that is in fact bringing them into the process of the houses. And I've just said, as I was answering to the other honorable member, that this bill will actually make them come into the houses, all the houses, national, provincial, etc., which means we are in the process of bringing them in. That is what we are doing. The fact that it is taking a bit of time, I think there is no bill that moves very quicker because it has to follow all the processes. And this is what we are doing. And I've just said the bill will be submitted to Cabinet so that it moves forward. So we are doing something to address the question of the Khoi and Sons. Thank you.
The Honorable Msibi.
Honorable Speaker, it's Honorable Imam. Thank you, ma'am. Honorable President, I must thank you for the consideration given to the Khoi people. My understanding is there are about 42 different tribes of the Khoi people in South Africa. A very major portion of the Khoi people are saying that they are being marginalized and not being considered, and no consultation is taking place with them. And that government is working only with a very small percentage of the Khoi people in this country. Could you perhaps please elaborate on that, Honorable President? Thank you.
Honorable the President.
Well, Honorable Speaker, I might not have the knowledge of the total number of the different groupings, but we have been engaging the Khoi and San through the structures that they have, which they've recognized, which we believe they therefore represent the groups but we have also engaged with some of them directly. I don't think what we have done, we have deliberately excluded other people. We have actually tried to talk to all of them. There are people who speak on their behalf who have been put by the groupings that we talk to, and these are the people who have been engaging on. And I'm sure the process of sifting as to who are the real leaders or whatever, that process I'm sure will be going on all the time. In all the communities, there are different people that would be there, whatever the description would be, but they'll be different. But there'll be those who will be senior. And I've come to areas where I've been introduced to the kings of the Khoisan people, and we have interacted with them. I'm not aware of those that are excluded, and I'm sure if there are who are excluded, which are legitimately supposed to be in the process is there, they would know the process, or interact with the government structure so that they then come into the fold. I think that's what should happen. Thank you.
The last supplementary question on this particular question will come from the Honorable Hlengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, I think the nub of the issue comes from the response that the President has given now, that there does seem to be a piecemeal approach to the issues of the Khoisan San, whether it is the issue of land, whether it's the issue of language and their recognition. And whether then, Mr. President, are you in a position now, moving forward, to say, how can we have a structured and a coordinated approach to ensuring that we address all the issues related to the Khoisan San in a holistic package, as opposed to the piecemeal approaches? We appreciate the recognition, and it must be applauded that will be afforded to them as the bill stipulates, when we still debate the bill at a later stage. But the piecemeal approach in which seems to be applied at this point in time to their recognition is in itself a problem. So what is going to be done then moving forward for a well-balanced and coordinated, well-structured approach to ensuring that the areas that you touch on are addressed, so that we don't have a situation where the President will be saying, well, on that area I don't know, on that area I don't know. Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Well, the process we are following is a structured process. I didn't say we are following a process that is not structured. All I said is that I'm not aware of those who are outside of the process. And if they are there, I've said they should approach the authorities so that they are able to be dealt with. And as well as the question of their legitimacy in terms of people who are talking to the government, who are talking to the department, because they are. And then, as I've said, we have met even some of them outside of the processes, but meeting them in some of their areas. Well, insofar as dealing with that issue, it is a structured approach, and therefore, if they're outside, they should come in. I don't think the honorable member is suggesting I should go around all the mountains looking for them. I think we are all aware there are municipalities, there are departments, they should be able to come. With regard to the land issue, of course, the law puts a cut-off date or a year from which the claims were to be made. Now, the point which we have been raising in general has been, what do we do with those that lost their lands before? And it will include the Khoisan San. It's a matter that we need to deal with, and it needs to be engaged. I don't think anyone could stand up unilaterally and say, now, because I've discovered there are people beyond this date, therefore I should decide what to do. Is again the matter that we would need, I'm sure, a representation so that that could be looked at by the country. I have made the point, particularly addressing the House of Traditional Leaders, that the matters that relates to the Khoisan Sans cannot be left unattended to by us. They need to, but they would need all of us to find ways and means of how to address those issues. And I think the Minister, particularly of Rural Development, has been interacting with those communities. I think there's a lot of information to shed the light on the matters we are discussing now. Thank you very much.
We now come to question number 5, and I call upon the Honorable Mwango.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable President, for your reply to my question. Honorable President, as you correctly state in your reply, this process has been laboring on since 2007. That is 8 years now. It is also conditional, among other conditions, upon the offense being perpetrated prior to 16 June 1999. That presupposes that the large majority of applicants have been languishing under correctional services supervision for at least 15 years now. This has placed immense suffering on not only the applicants but also their families. My question, Honorable President, is when can these applicants for presidential pardon expect finality and closure on this process? Can you indicate a timeline or intended date for your expected decision? I thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, it's not going to be easy for me to indicate the cutoff date or when will this happen, because the matter is not, I think, an easy one. As you know, there are processes within government that are followed as you deal with the issues of pardon. The Department of Justice, for an example, has to do a lot of work in terms of looking at these specific cases and try to find the real truth and other necessary information, and then make the necessary recommendations, but also to identify the people as to the claims that people are making. You know that even the reference group itself took a bit of time to go through the individuals that were part of the number that was being looked at. The process is going on, partly from the department, now with the legal advisors in the presidency. They are looking into those issues. So in that context, therefore, I can't stand here and say, I think by this date this would be done. But the process is going on to look at all of them as they have come before the level of the president to look at them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Davis. Who put Davis? Davis from the ANC. We move on.
From the ANC, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Your Excellency, from the information you've provided, 1,183 recommendations of the 2,109 applications for pardon have been accepted by the reference group. Has anything changed with regard to the mandate of the reference group and the recommendations already made to you, inclusive of that of the IFP applicants, whose offenses were committed with a political motive before June 1999? Thank you.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. No, I didn't say there's anything that has changed. I said it is a process that has been going on with regard to those applicants, and those are the ones that are being looked at. Because the reference group, for an example, made recommendations, and the recommendations are to be looked at the end. I don't think it is a foregone conclusion that once recommendations are made, then you just put a stamp you also subject those recommendations to processes that I've just referred to, so that at the end, when we take the final decision, we are satisfied that we have looked at all other aspects, and therefore that when we say, yes, we are giving a pardon here, we are satisfied that indeed, firstly, the recommendations themselves are based on very sound grounds, and therefore those who also within government look at these and do then refer the matter forward to say, yes, we believe that this should be done. The president himself must look at the matters and then take the decision. And as I've said, the processes are not just easy, because we are dealing with people who are in prison on the conditions that we have talked about. So I don't think we can then say things have changed. The process is going on. And the day would have completed looking at those recommendations, and I'm sure we'll be able to indicate that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Ngweniso. Enkosi Speaker. Tata uMongameli, kolu xolelwano ulenzayo, ingaba yintoni ekufanele yenziwe kwi-ofisi yakho okanye yenziwe eSouth Africa ukuze kukhululwe amabanjwa e-APLA ayelwela inkululeko kunye nawe MK? Inkosi. Honorable President.
Well, I'd imagine if all people who ask for pardon, there are processes that people undertake. Either the person makes the application, and the application is subjected to scrutiny by those in the authority to do so, and then make the necessary recommendations. The issue of APLA people, as you say, and other prisoners, I think is an issue that is talked about more politically out there. But I think the crux of the matter is that there should be very specific applications made to say, here are people, they believe on these conditions, they must therefore be given the pardon, so that we address those. Because it's one thing talking about it in generalities out there when there is no specific application made. I think we could apply our minds to the application that is going to be made. I'm not sure what happened to the reference group, whether they dealt with that grouping or not. But I think if we are to consider the specific cases, specific applications must be made so that we could look into those kind of issues. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Breitenbach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, you have the prerogative power to pardon offenders. Following the Hugo and Orbat cases in the Constitutional Court, the exercise of these powers must be rational. There is a perception, which underlies this question, that the approval of applications for presidential pardon is determined by political considerations. The question I wish to ask you, Mr. President, is what the rational grounds were for you in 2010 pardoning Mr. Buko Nansi, who was convicted of the theft of trust monies in 2005, and who happens to be the husband of Advocate Namtobo Jiba, the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions. Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Well, as I say, Honorable Speaker, that people make very specific applications, and the applications are looked at, and on the basis of what is before us in terms of the information, that's what makes us to take the decision, whether we give pardon or not. And I'm sure the facts must have made the decision to be taken when we looked at the case itself. Thank you very much.
We now come to question number 6.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
What is the point of order, Honorable Steenhuisen?
Madam Speaker, the President has not answered the question that the Honourable Breitenbach put to him. She asked a very specific question. She's been given a vague and middling answer. We can't hold the President accountable, and this is precisely why we had drama again at the beginning of the House, was because the President was vague in his answers before. So please, can we please press the President to answer the Honourable Breitenbach's question?
Well, Honorable Steenhuisen, an answer has been given. It might not be the answer the Honorable Breitenbach is looking for, but an answer has been given.
Honourable Speaker, just
Honourable
on a
JJ.
point of order, I mean, the Honourable Steenhuisen well knows that follow-up questions are meant to relate to the actual question asked. And in this case, the question that Honourable Breitenbach asked had nothing to do with the question that Honourable Mwango asked relating to pardons from the reference group, IFP pardons from the reference group. So it's actually, the question from Honourable Breitenbach shouldn't have been allowed.
And honorable members, can we proceed now to question number 6?
Sorry, Madam Speaker.
From the Honorable Professor Kubisa.
Madam Speaker.
Of the NFP. What is the problem,
The point of order is that if you were going to rule the question out of order as a new question, either the presiding officer or the person to whom the question has been put should indicate very clearly that it is a new question or is not related. Instead, the President chose to answer the question, well, and I use answer in the loosest possible terms. He provided a response which did not answer the question.
I thought you would appreciate, and the honorable member would appreciate the fact that the President makes an effort to answer a totally new question. Because a supplementary question is always an unanticipated question.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, I now proceed to
Honorable
allow
Speaker.
Honorable Kubisa to give his supplementary question.
Honorable Speaker, may I please address you respectfully on a point of order?
What's your point of order, Honorable?
Marjinjam. No, Honorable Speaker, we had raised this question of the adequacy of the answers that the President gives, that the President must give very specific answers, that it's not meaningful to engage in vague answers. And we're reminded by the Honorable Steenhuisen that we must accept when the President has responded. And now he stands a bit double standard. When his questions of his party are not answered, we must all stand here and go around debating whether the answer is vague or not. And the President's answer to pay back the money was not vague, but they pulled out. I think you must rule him on a basis of double standard, which is very wrong. I mean, it's wrong, extremely. We were wanting a direct answer about pay back the money. They said no, the question was Honorable answered. Speaker, That's double standard. Abuse of process, Honorable Speaker. That's abuse of process here.
Madam Speaker,
please.
I'm very happy to get onto this topic if you like.
No.
Because there are big double standards as well when you come and say pay back the money when your own leader owes lots of money. That's double standards. but nevertheless, the President chose to respond to the question from Honourable Breitenbach, and I accept, Madam Speaker, that you can't come and stand here and answer for him. But really one would expect far more from the head of the executive in this country to be more forthcoming with the body that holds him accountable.
Thank you, Honorable Steenhuisen.
On a point of order, Speaker.
No, ayikho enye point of order. Ake silalele ubaba uKhubisa.
I wanted the clarity, Speaker.
Yeah, ni clarity.
There might be people we don't know in the House. Can I be told who's Ginger in the House? Please.
No, you're not going to be told that. Can I have Honorable Kubisa with his follow-up question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mhlonishwa Mongameli, it's crystal clear that according to your response, you were pushing the African agenda at this summit. Now, 8 months have lapsed since the summit was held. Now, it's also aware that Africa is plagued by a number of challenges, and chief among these are those of poverty, underdevelopment, and slow economic growth. Now, would you say, therefore, there has been any advantage or dividends, tangible ones, that have accrued since the summit was held for Africa generally and South Africa in particular? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, summits are summits. You hold summits and take resolutions. And some resolutions are implemented quicker, some not quicker. For an example, one of the issues that was discussed was the AGOA, which was an agreement between the United States and Africa. And that matter was discussed very extensively. At the time, for an example, there was a feeling from the American side that South Africa had passed the stage of being a developing country and therefore it should no longer benefit. And we succeeded in that summit to make the United States agree that we are still part of it. So it was supposed to reach a particular point of expiring and it had to be renewed. So there's an agreement. That agreement is there and it is benefiting Africa and South Africa. But there were a number of other issues that were discussed which were important for the understanding between the two sides. And we discussed those issues, the interests of the African continent and how we believe we need to deal with that. There were many other issues that we talked about. We believe that the summit was very successful. And indeed, it stands to benefit both sides because it benefits the Americans, but it also benefits Africa. We have not therefore done a kind of an assessment by now whether agreement number so and so understanding has been necessarily accomplished. So I can't give the details as to, yes, this has been done, this has not been done. But we came to a very clear understanding on the issues we're raising with the United States. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Shengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, in light of President Mugabe's state visit last week and the fact that he wasn't invited to the US Africa Summit, I would just want to find out, Mr. President, because it does seem we've got a responsibility as South Africa, one, to ensure that the political conclusion that has been arrived at in Zimbabwe will ultimately translate into economic progress. Now, as we engage with Zimbabwe, how can we in good faith engage in the international community and leave behind the problems of Zimbabwe? Because quite frankly, if Zimbabwe's problems get solved, South Africa stands to address its other problems because of what is going on in Zimbabwe. So the exclusion of President Mugabe and the Zimbabwean government at that summit, and then secondly, the visit last week, is there a move on the part of your government, Mr. President, to facilitate arriving at a working relationship between Zimbabwe and the US so that we can be able to resolve holistically the problems of Zimbabwe? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. No, firstly, when the issue of Zimbabwe emerged earlier, a number of years ago, South Africa was among the African countries that dealt with the issue of Zimbabwe with regard to the United States, as well as the European Union and many other countries, saying they should not sanction Zimbabwe or make Zimbabwe be under sanctions by them. And we proceeded to deal with the issues in Zimbabwe and resolve those issues politically. And we also came back to say we've now resolved the matters. Europe I think, relaxed very few conditions. And I think United States has never did so. And we've never taken that matter again since, in our view, Zimbabwe had dealt with the issues that were needed to be dealt with. So when we went to meet the United States president as the African leaders, the issue of Zimbabwe did not arise. Now, having said that, South Africa is not like a country which must take issues for every country individual in Africa with any other, either part or country or whatever. It's not necessarily our task, while Zimbabwe is there, to stand up here and go to United States and say, please just sort out your things between the two of you. That's not our task. So we have not done so as a country, as South Africa. I don't think we're about to do so. I think Zimbabwe is big enough to stand on its own and raise the issues between them. It's one thing if any country asked us to do so. It would be a different matter. But we can't just stand up because we are South Africa and say, you, Zimbabwe and United States, you now have to sort out your things. It's not our task to do so. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Hadebe.
Honorable President, during the summit of US and Africa leadership, something happened whereby the Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders Initiative was changed to Mandela Washington Fellowship Initiative. Was the South African government consulted because the announcement was made during that summit? And number two, Honorable President, on the issue of the support of America on the peace and security measures that Africa wants to institute, what assurance do we have that the Americans are not going to take the strategic initiative from the AU? Because wherever America has been involved in peace and security, there's always been bloodbath at the end of the day. Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Sorry, just repeat the first part of your question. I wanted to get it clear.
All right. Honorable President, during the US-Africa Leadership Summit, there was also a summit of Young African Leaders Initiative, which was organized by President Obama. When your summit started, he announced that the Washington Fellowship was changed to Mandela Washington Fellowship. What I want to ask is, what was your government consulted about that? Thank you.
Honorable President.
No, thank you. Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. No, there was no consultation. The issue of the young leadership was discussed as an issue, not the change of the scholarship. Because African countries felt that for the United States to come to Africa and pick and choose young people to go and train them in America was done without consultation. If the United States wanted to create leadership, as it reported, what type of leadership they would be creating from the young people from Africa without talking to the African leaders? That was the issue, and President Barack Obama considered that, yes, they can see the problem. And we said, in future, really, we want to be part of the process. If at all they've got the resources to have, we should be there to participate in shaping what type of leadership qualities that they need. So we discussed the matter, and then many African leaders expressed their unhappiness about the matter. With regard to the issue of the initiative in Africa, as America would assist, President of the United States made it very clear that he does not want to take the leadership. He wants to assist, not that he must participate in the leadership. He even said that even if they will reach a point where they would have to either send soldiers, it would be us saying so. They are not going to send soldiers At the moment, they want to assist by whatever else, not the troops, so that our initiatives are undertaken by us. So that matter was also discussed, and that was an understanding. Thank you.
The Honorable Hill Lewis.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. So for 2 years, we've heard constant warnings about the imminent exclusion of South Africa from AGOA. And yet it seems that the government has allowed the issue to run right to the edge of the cliff before showing any real urgency in resolving it. And so now, President, at the very 11th hour and after the unprecedented step of a phone call from Vice President Biden to Deputy President Ramaphosa, we have now dispatched Minister Davies to Washington to try and sort out the mess. President, why has this taken so long? And why has the government allowed a private industry body, the South African Poultry Association, to determine the trade policy for the government of South Africa? And President, with just 3 weeks to go before the deadline on AGOA, can you give this House an assurance and South Africa an assurance that you will do whatever it takes to ensure and guarantee that South Africa will not be excluded from AGOA? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I said when we were in the United States, that matter was concluded, that South Africa will be part of Africa. There is nothing that is being negotiated now. What is being negotiated now, I'm sure, are the details of how this agreement is going to be. That issue was concluded at the time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. That brings us to the end of supplementary questions to the President. And I thank the Honorable President.
Honorable Speaker, on an emergency point.
Pardon?
On a point of emergency, we've got it on good authority that there are students who are protesting outside and are being brutalized by the police. Police are shooting students outside who came to protest here in Parliament and bring to the attention of members of Parliament that we should take decisive action on xenophobia. And the police are harassing them outside there. So I was thinking that maybe as this House, we should take a view that we accept what the students are protesting and understand their concerns, but the police must not brutalize ordinary students, particularly when they try to bring attention to an issue that is happening here in Parliament.
We thank you for the information and will make sure that the necessary attention is paid to that situation. We now come to notices of motion. Does any member wish to give notice of a motion? Honorable Dunjwa.
I move on behalf, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the role played by South African National AIDS Council in the reduction of the high mortality rate resulting from the HIV and AIDS pandemic in the country. I so move.
Yes, are there any other motions? Honorable member sitting there in a gray suit.
Honorable Speaker, inhliziyo ebuhlungu sokhohla igama lami.
Nkosi yami.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that is at its next sitting, this House debates the disastrous and rapid environmental degradation of the Volga River catchment area, one of the primary water catchment areas for the Vaal River, and the subsequent impact this has on millions of people in Gauteng who rely on this water for everyday survival and economic activity. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Lozi. Oh, he didn't. Honorable Member there? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move for the next sitting of this House that the House debate the urgent need for this Parliament as a responsible and a forward-thinking Parliament to install and promote the use of renewable energy sources on the parliamentary premises in order to not only reduce our dependence on grid-based energy sources, but also to set an example in the combating of global warming. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates the illegal occupation of government and private-owned land. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Kawula.
Ngibonge Sekela Sihlalo. Ngisukuma ngaphansi kwenhlangano ezoba uhulumeni ngokuzayo EFF. Ukuthi ngokulandelayo ake sikhulumeni la ngezindlela ezintsha ukuze kuqinisekiswe ukuthi abelaphi bendabuko bayafakwa ohlelweni lwezempilo. Ukuqinisekisa ukuthi abelaphi bendabuko bazuze kuma medical abaqashi ukumele abakwazi ukuwamukela imibhalo nezincomo zabelaphi bendabuko njengoba imibhalo zomthetho ibavumela njengabantu bengabadi. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very much. I noted that some members were not able to get the interpretation. Can we ask the interpretation services to improve their work? Honourable Member of the IFP.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I hereby give notice that I shall move at the next sitting of this House, as this House debates the latest World Economic Forum Global Information Technology Report, in which South Africa is dropped in the rankings of ICT-savvy states, which highlights the need for government and the sector to make internet connectivity more affordable and accessible. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the impact of cable theft, improper electricity infrastructure, and illegal electricity connections, with particular reference to informal settlements, their role in shack fires, and solutions for us to address these problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member.
Ngiyathokoza Mqinisihlalo. Honourable House Chairperson, I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the entrenchment of national unity and togetherness, where all citizens regard themselves as one another's keepers, and where we come together to solve problems and build a united and prosperous South Africa together. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member from the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates improving the remuneration and working conditions of academics to encourage them to continue with teaching and research and not take up administrative posts in both private and public institutions simultaneously. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member from the ANC.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates the implementation of an optional national youth service for 2 years service, which includes sporting, recreational, military, and vocational training, with an intention to build a social, inclusive society. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Filtane.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move on behalf of the UDM
that the House debates on its next sitting the relevance of colonial and apartheid statutes in the democratic South Africa, as well as their impact on public history and perceptions about our painful past. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Mhloniswa.
Thank you, Chair. I move on behalf of the National Freedom Party that on its next sitting, this House discusses challenges posed by load shedding on the lives of the broader society. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Member of the EFF.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates transformation of professional bodies for chartered accountants, engineers, architects, and all professions to uphold the need for speedier transformation, which will result in more previously disadvantaged individuals being accredited professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Mponjane.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party that the House debate the introduction of Mandarin language as a subject in our schools. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member Renilwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters, which is the government in waiting, to move that in its next sitting, the House debates the introduction of legislative mechanisms to ban the enforcement of compulsory testing of HIV by insurance companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, the back there.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the acceleration of the development of strategies geared at retaining young people in schools until they complete secondary schooling. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Dudley.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. On behalf of the African Christian Democratic Party, I shall move that the House debates the annual report of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Linguistic and Religious Communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member of the IFP.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. I hereby give notice on behalf of the IFP that I shall move at the next sitting of this House that this House debates the continued exclusion of many children with disabilities from the schooling system as well as the early childhood development centres, especially in rural areas. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any notices of motion? None. We now move to motions without notice. Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I move without notice that the House welcomes the recent announcement by the White House that President Barack Obama intends to remove Cuba from the American government's list of nations that sponsor terrorism, eliminating a major obstacle to the restoration of diplomatic relations after decades of hostilities. Further notes that the decision to remove Cuba from the list is a crucial step in Obama's effort to turn the page on a Cold War era dispute, and it comes amid a normalization of relations between the two countries. Remember that this follows a much-anticipated meeting between President Obama and President Raul Castro of Cuba on the sidelines of the Summit of the Americas meeting in Panama recently. The first such formal session between the leaders of the two countries in more than a half-century. Recalls for more than 30 years, Cuba has been on the State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism, a designation shared only by Iran, Sudan, and Syria. Further recalls Cuba's place on the list has long snarled its access to financial markets, and more recently emerged as a sticking point in negotiations to reopen embassies that have officially been closed for 5 decades. Acknowledges that Cuba will not come off the list until after a 45-day review period, during which a joint resolution to block its removal could be considered in the House and the Senate, and congratulates the two presidents on their move towards normal relations of the two countries. As so moved.
Thank you, Honorable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion.
There being no objection, the motion is agreed to. Honorable Member Ndlozi.
The EFF rises to move without notice, Honorable Chairperson, that the House notes the University of Cape Town Council's decision to remove the statue of the colonialist and anti-black racist Cecil John Rhodes from campus following the students' protest which demanded its fall. Note that we should mark this as an important step towards the transformation of our public spaces and academic spaces, which open up a meaningful possibility to recreate them in favor of a progressive cultural symbolism that represents post-apartheid democratic values. Celebrate the student protesters, beginning with Chumani Makwele, who through their decisive action have inspired the whole society to reimagine its public spaces. Note that UCT must inspire all other universities as centers of learning and research not to wait for protest, but to undertake a non-negotiable removal of colonial and apartheid statues whilst ensuring public participation in that regard. Note that all institutions that must take inspiration from UCT is government and parliament, who must also remove all colonial and apartheid monuments in our public spaces. Further acknowledge the statue of Louis Botha, Queen Victoria outside and inside Parliament must move as an affirmation of the transformation of our public spaces. They must fall. Further commit to a consultative process to engage with all of society to replace them in accordance with post-apartheid constitutional values. Commit that all colonial and apartheid statues must fall together with their legacies of landlessness, racism, and poverty. I so move.
Honorable Member Ndlozi, may I address you? Honorable Ndlozi, may I address you? Suku. As the now Deputy Chair, Chief Whip of the EFF, you know the rules. That in terms of motions without notice, they have to be circulated at a particular time. Is that so? And you know that there are a number of those from your party that have not been circulated within the agreed time. So we allow you to read, but we are not going to put those motions for consideration.
Honorable Chairperson, as the Deputy Chief Whip of the EFF, I am saying that we circulated the motions and we circulated them on time. By the way, the request to include motions in the order paper today itself, as per the staff table, came very late, that this session will recognize motions and notices of motion after there had been an idea that they won't be. So I think in all good spirit and fairness, let us not exclude motions on those technical reasons because we might go very far. But our motions were circulated. May they be accepted or declined on the basis of their substance, not on the technicality, because we did submit and circulate them. I asked of the House's indulgence and your indulgence, Honorable Chairperson, because we did circulate his motions.
Thank you, Honorable Ndlozi. I'll ask Honorable Mahlangu to just have a mini consultations with yourself so that we can clarify what was indeed the status with regards to motions today.
Chair.
Honorable Hlengwa.
Chair, just to clarify, the DA objects to that motion. Just to clarify.
Thank you, Honorable Waters. I had not yet put the motion because I wanted the consultations to happen.
Chair, we welcome the objection as expected, but what it does is that it sets a precedence that we can continue reading.
That's why I've not yet
the DA is expected to object to
Honorable
these kinds of
Hlengwa.
progressive things.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. I hereby move, without notice of the IFP, that the House notes with appreciation that on Thursday, 26 March 2015, Stellenbosch University awarded Public Protector Advocate Thuli Madonsa an honorary
Doctor of Law degree. Further notes that on Friday, 10 April 2015, she was presented with her third honorary Doctor of Laws degree by Rhodes University in Grahamstown, Eastern Cape. Congratulates the Public Protector for this award, which she has attributed to the Public Protector team. Affirms the assertion of the Stellenbosch University that the Public Protector's contribution as a developer and a custodian of South African constitutional democracy and the rule of law has ensured her a permanent place in South African legal history, and her commitment to the Constitution and her integrity and moral courage represented a beacon of hope. Implores the Public Protector to continue executing her duties and responsibilities with honesty, honor, and integrity in the interests of the Constitution and the people of South Africa. Applauds Rhodes University and University of Stellenbosch for recognizing and awarding the good work being done by the Public Protector and their team, and commits to supporting and safeguarding the independence of all Chapter 9 institutions to maintain a healthy system of checks and balance in the governance of this country. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objection, agreed to. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the IFP, I move without notice that the House notes that prospective Mars adventurer Adriana Marais, a PhD student at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, has been named one of 15 promising young female scientists from around the world. Acknowledges that Marais received this accolade at the 17th Annual L'Oréal UNESCO for Women in Science Awards held at the Sorbonne University in Paris in March 2015. Further acknowledges that the event acknowledges the achievements of women in science who are at the cutting edge of research in their fields. Congratulates Marais on her award and on her research work on the quantum effects in photosynthesis. And finally, wishes her well as one of the 100 candidates worldwide shortlisted for a one-way expedition to Mars through the Mars One project. A group of 24 people will leave in 2024 and not return. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objection, motion is agreed to. Honorable Member of the NFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I move on behalf of the National Freedom Party that this House notes that the country is experiencing load shedding as a result of ESCOM's inability to meet domestic demand. Further notes that ESCOM has made several requests for consumers to use electricity sparingly to reduce the demand. And finally notes that the lights are on 24 hours a day in many government buildings, and very often street lamps are burning during the day. Wherefore, we call upon this Honorable House to voice its disapproval at the unnecessary wastage of electricity by government departments, municipalities, and the private sector. We call upon government departments and local municipalities to put in place and enforce plans to cut the unnecessary waste of electricity, which could ultimately reduce load shedding. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Ngwango.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I hereby move without notice that the House recognizes...
Honorable Chairperson.
Order. Honorable
My
Member,
apology
can you
to the
take a
colleague.
seat?
You did not put the previous motion to the House.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I go back to the previous motion? Are there any objections to the motion that was read before us? If none, motion agreed to. Apologies, Honorable Ngwango. You can start.
Thank you. I hereby move without notice that the House recognizes International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, which was observed with a series of events and activities worldwide on the 21st of March each year. Acknowledges that the day aimed to remind people of all the negative consequences of racial discrimination, and it also encourages people to remember their obligation and determination to combat racial discrimination. Further acknowledges that this year's theme, I quote, learning from historical tragedies to combat racial discrimination today, close quote, aims to explore the root causes of racism and racial discrimination and will stress the essential need to learn the lessons history has provided in order to combat racism and racial discrimination today. Calls upon the government and its various departments to promote the importance of this day and to make the people aware of the day so its significance will be greatly appreciated by many. Applauds all previous and current efforts to combat the plight of racial profiling and discrimination. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Ngango. If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objection, motion agreed to. Honorable Member, as earlier on I wish to address you, I asked the Secretary to consult with Honorable Ndlozi on a matter that related to the motions and what might have happened. There has been a consultation, and indeed it does seem that there was some confusion. And in respect of that, we will therefore put the motions for decision. Can I go back to the motion that was read by Honorable Ndlozi, on the matter of the Cecil John Road statue?
Yes, Madam Deputy Chairperson, we object to that motion.
There being an objection both from the DA, Honorable Waters, and Honorable Mulder.
Honorable Chair,
Yes, sir.
can he give us the reason why he's objecting?
Honorable Malima. Honorable Mulder, can you take a seat? It's not a practice that parties would give the reasons for objecting to motions. What we require as presiding officers is to know whether the motion is agreed to or there's an objection. So this motion has been objected to. Honorable Maxine.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. EFF rises to move without notice for the House to note that yesterday, 15 April 2015, the Western Cape High Court has ruled in favor of freedom of speech and democracy, but also in favor of the Marikana workers in the matter of EFF versus Parliament. Acknowledge that it is well within the rules of Parliament and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa to say the ANC government massacred workers in Marikana. Note that this is a victory of the voice of the working class in Parliament and the uncomfortable truth lived and experienced at the hands of the ANC government and the super exploitative white monopoly capital. Note that Judge J. Bozalek ruled that the decision of Thandi Modise on the 19th June 2014 is reviewed and set aside. This has to do with her decision, that statement made by Commander-in-Chief, Comrade Julius Malema, are unparliamentary and do not accord with the decorum of the House. That he further said, the following decisions are reviewed and set aside. We are teaching the ANC the lesson and the laws. That's the decision Thandi Modise to ask the CIC Commander-in-Chief to leave the House and Thandi Modise's decisions to
Honorable
request
Maxine,
and
can I just ask you that when you refer to honorable members,
Honorable, the chairperson of the
including your
NCOP,
leader.
NCOP Honorable Thandi Modise's decision to request and order the Commander-in-Chief Honorable Julius Malema to withdraw his statements that ANC government had massacred mine workers in Marikana, in that the police who killed them represented the ANC government, the judge said. Further note that Judge J. Bozalek also ruled that the applicant's cost, including the cost of two counsel, are to be paid by Parliament. Acknowledge that the Commander-in-Chief, Honorable Julius Malema, refuses to withdraw his remarks because doing so will be to allow censorship of the truth about what the workers of Marikana went through. It will mean that EFF accepts that their story must not be told within the precision it deserves within Parliament. Note that the ruling demonstrates that the EFF possesses a superior understanding of our constitutional provision, as well as the provision of the rules of Parliament, in as far as freedom of speech is concerned. It is further provides a good indication of what is going to happen to the case around the powers, privilege, and immunities of Parliament Committee, which recommended that EFF members were in contempt of Parliament for asking the presidents to pay back the money unduly spent in Nkandla. Further note that it must be reiterated in this house that indeed the ANC government killed workers in Marikana, and to this day no one has been arrested. No one is in front of court answering the case of so brutal a mass murderer. Call on President Jacob Zuma that he must not delay the justice of the workers any further, as they've been waiting for more than 2 years now, and release the Marikana Commission report as soon as possible to allow closure to so terrible a crime against humanity. I so move, Madam Speaker.
If there are no objections, I put the
Object.
motion.
Object.
Honorable Mahlangu. Objections
We
have
object,
been
yeah.
noted.
Chair, is it allowed to object to court decisions? I mean, really, this is...
Honorable
It's a
Shibambo.
recital of a court decision, really.
Honorable Shibambo. As you know that these are motions without notices that we are dealing with. We are not dealing with the court decision. Honorable Ndlozi.
On a point of order, can you guide the whippery of the ANC, Honorable Chair? They must stand up when they are addressing us. The honorable member must stand up, speak to the mic, because he objected sitting down.
No.
And therefore, maybe the objection must not be recorded.
Honorable
Because in terms of the rules, he's out of order.
Honorable
Then
Ndlozi,
I
can
will,
you take
then
a
I will
seat?
object, Honourable Deputy Speaker. If there's a problem with that, I object to your little propaganda.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mulder. Honorable Mahlangu.
Honorable Chair, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party moves without notice that this House notes that on the 2nd of April 2015, gunmen stormed the Garissa University College in Garissa, Kenya, killing at least 147 people, mainly students, and injuring 79 more. Further notes that the gunmen, allegedly from the militant group and Al-Qaeda offshoot, Al-Shabaab, took over 700 students hostage, freeing Muslims and killing those who identified as Christians. Remember, 4 of the attackers were also killed during the massacre, and 5 men were later arrested in connection with the attack. Recalls that the attack was the deadliest in Kenya since 1998, the United States Embassy bombing, and is the 2nd deadliest overall, with more casualties than the 2002 Mombasa attack. Acknowledges Al-Shabaab as a multi-ethnic militant group based in Somalia with links to Al-Qaeda, had killed over 200 people in Kenya in the 2 years prior to this event, and conveys our heartfelt condolences to the government of Kenya and to the families of all the deceased. I so move, Chair.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objection, agreed to. I was looking on the side of the DA. I thought there was one member who had raised her hand long ago. Honorable member.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that this House notes with concern that the Art Provincial Archive building erected outside Mbombela is fast becoming a white elephant. Also notes that these buildings are empty, but that most of the offices inside the building were fully furnished with no staff members, except for a handful of security personnel patrolling the grounds and reception area. Further notes that to date no archiving of documents is taking place, which is vital in order to streamline the province's record keeping. Acknowledges that former MEC for Culture, Sport and Recreation, Ms. Dina Pula, in 2008 announced that 150 million had gone into its construction, and in 2013 MEC Sibongile Manana requested a further 5.6 million to furnish it in stages. Further acknowledges that both former MECs have claimed that the department has provided training on effective archive and record management services, yet there has been no visible outcome of this training. also acknowledges that the Department of Culture, Sports and Recreation is notorious for overspending on capital projects and then seemingly abandoning them. Calls on the Mpumalanga provincial government to prioritize education service delivery instead of wasting public funds on erecting white elephants. I so move. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
And so object, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Objection? Honorable member? From the ANC, the honorable member? Okay. Yes, honorable member. EFF?
Honorable Chair, my name is Honorable Muraudzi. Not Mulaudzi, Mura.
Muraudzi.
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 Yes.
Honorable Muraudzi.
Thank you. The EFF rises to move without notice for the House to note this very important motion. The 22nd anniversary of the assassination of the Christopher Tembisi-Lahani, who was gunned down on the 10th of April 1993.
You can continue, honorable member, we are protected.
Yeah, man. I think the honorable members, they must behave like we're in the August House.
Honorable member.
We're not in the stadium where we have howlers.
Honorable Muraudzi, you have been given a chance to proceed with your motion.
But they're disturbing me by howling. Celebrate the contribution made by Chris Hani to the liberation of the people of South Africa, and in particular, his uncompromised demand for the genuine transition that was based on the ideal of Freedom Charter. Note that Chris Hani's uncompromising demand for land, free quality education, and nationalization at the peak of negotiations was a demonstration of his determination and commitment to the people and not the political elite. Note his courage in this demand remains unmatched by those running the government today, who, despite having power in their hands, failed to deliver on the ideals of the Freedom Charter that Hani presented. Further note that Hani is the haunting political voice to the ruling party and its faction, because the entire senior leadership of the Communist Party took over the ANC as a fact, but uninterruptedly implements neoliberalism. Further note that Hani is a haunting figure to the current ruling faction, because this very Communist Party dominated cabinet presided over the massacre of 34 black miners in Marikana. Acknowledge that the ANC or even the SACP, although they can legitimately claim Chris Hani to be theirs, they cannot claim his ideas or even have ethical basis to associate with them. Note that they go to his grave every year on his anniversary to put more and more stones under the pretext of commemorating him, while those stones symbolically stand as an attempt to try and block his ideas from resurrecting. Further note that they can claim his grave, but the spirit of Chris Hani is not in the graveyard anymore. Instead, it is living and kicking every day in the economic emancipation movement, on the picket line of land occupation, minimum wage strikes, removal of statues, and many other struggles of the poor and vulnerable in our society, including inside this house in the benches of the EFF. I so move.
If there are no objections,
ANC objects, Chair.
there is an objection.
Honorable Chair, I think we must note that the ANC has objected to Chris Hani.
Honorable Shibambo, can you take your seat? That was not a point of order. Honorable Nkomo, IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. The IFP moves without notice that this House recognize World Health Day marked on the April the 7th of this year with the theme, food security. Further recognizes that the occasion also celebrated the World Health Organization whose birthday. It acknowledges that food safety is the responsibility of all stakeholders along the food production value chain. It further acknowledges World Health Day 2015 is an opportunity to alert people working in different government sectors, farmers, manufacturers, retailers, health practitioners, as well as consumers about the importance of food safety and the part each can play in ensuring that everyone can feel confident that the food on their plate is safe to eat. It calls upon the government to employ the various stakeholders to effectively play their part in ensuring that these ideals are seen through. And it applauds those who have kept to their end of the deal and have delivered food that is healthy and safe for human consumption. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objection, motion has been carried. Honorable member of the NFP, honorable member of the
Ngiyabonga sihlalo nokwesandla sami sokudala siphezulu. Nezinkukhu bezingakehle emthini isandla sami sesiphezulu.
Uxole.
I move nokho-ke on behalf of the NFP. Without notice that this House notes that South Africa has been placed number 75th out of 143 countries in the World Economic Forum report on global IT this morning. And further notes that the report measures how countries are performing in leveraging information and ICT for social and economic impact. Further notes that the report also shown that South Africa has a good regulatory and business climate, but is performing poorly in key areas such as low level of affordability, bandwidth availability, low focus by government, and internet access in schools. And further note that South Africa ranked number 7th on the previous list. Wherefore, we call upon this House to voice its disappointment at the regression of the state of ITC in South Africa and implore all stakeholders in government and private sector to urgently address the levels of ITC affordability and availability of bandwidth and provision of internet access to schools. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objection, motion has been carried. Honorable Mahlangu, sorry, before you, Honorable Member of the DA, I had noted him earlier. You will follow.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that this House notes the Big 6 of Cape Town became the City of Cape Town Big 7 with the introduction of the new City Walk. Also notes this announcement was made at the World Travel Market Africa, currently taking place at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. Further notes that the City Walk, which connects significant places in the urban heart of Cape Town through storytelling, public art, walking tours and retail offerings, now joins the existing Cape Town Big 6, which includes key attractions such as Robben Island, Cape Point and many others. Acknowledges that with due regard to the aforementioned, the important role tourism plays to connect citizens and communities as part of nation building and job creation, and congratulates the City of Cape Town on continuously promoting effective ways and innovative ways in terms of tourism promotion. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objection?
Honorable Chair, we have a problem with the motion because it excludes places like Kukuletu, Kailicha and others, and therefore
Honorable Mahlangu, are you objecting to the, or are you amending it?
we are objecting.
Okay. Honorable Mahlangu, can you give your motion?
Honorable Chair, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party moves without notice that this House notes with great enthusiasm the appointment of South Africa's comedian Trevor Noah as a replacement of Jon Stewart, the host of The Daily Show in the United States of America. Believes that with the appointment, he joins the list of prominent South Africans whose talent is being recognized and celebrated internationally. Trust that he will incredibly continue to entertain American viewers and that of the world in his funny, smart, considerate, and thoughtful ways, and call upon all South Africans to support him in his new position and thanking him for flying the South African flag very high. Thank you, Chair.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objection, motion carried. Honorable Filtane.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Motion on the death of the world's oldest person. The UDM moves that the House notes that the world's oldest woman, Misao Okawa, born on the 5th of March 1898, died at the age of 117 years on the 31st of March 2015. Further notes that she died the same month she celebrated her birthday. And her age as the oldest person in the world was confirmed by the Guinness World Records in 2013, a book that publishes world records both on human achievements and the extremes of the natural world. Further comments the age she lived and calls on South Africans to lead a healthy lifestyle in order to increase our life expectancy, which has decreased over the past decade. I so move. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. There be no objection, the motion is carried. Honorable Tigeleti.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The NC moves that notice that the House congratulates the people and government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for holding free and fair general elections held on the 28th March 2015. Further congratulates President Muhammadu Buhari for winning the elections and taking charge of Africa's most populous nation and its biggest economy. Believes that the outcome of these elections has amplified and added value to the entrenchment of democracy in Africa through. Further believes that the holding of regular, free, fair, and transparent elections, not only in Nigeria, but throughout the continent, is a critical precondition for the attainment of our collective continental vision, Agenda 2063, and suggests that holding successful elections in Africa will contribute to a prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global area. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. There being no objections, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Are there any further motions without notice? Indeed, the reason I'm asking for the second time is because I have noted in the list that the EFF had lots of motions without notice. Now I was wondering what has happened so that I'm not accused of not having given you a chance. There being no other motions, this concludes the business for the day. The House is adjourned.